right, it's 7:02, and I'm going to go ahead and call us to order and invite everyone to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Is there a motion to approve the agenda this evening?
So moved.
Thank you, Meg. Is there a second? Seconded by Sarah. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Under approval of consent agenda, we have two items: approval of our September 17th regular Board of Ed meeting minutes and approval of an out-of-state field trip for the PHS DECA to the Charlotte Convention Center in North Carolina in November. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Meg. Is there a second? Seconded by Kim. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Audience of citizens. Do we have anyone with us this evening in person who wishes to address the board at this time? Do we have anyone online who wishes to address the board at this time?
No one has chimed in yet.
Okay, thank you. Then we are going to move on to our Portland Public Schools Spotlight, and this evening we are excited to welcome our middle school. Who's introducing? Introducing. All right, our middle school principal, Chuck Kershaw, is going to introduce the Spotlight. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to introduce this evening. We have some fantastic students here tonight. They're here. I'll let Mr. Hilbert introduce himself in a moment. But last time I was here, I was sharing some work we've been doing in the science program tonight. I'm really excited to talk not about Portland, but about some really fantastic music program. It really enriches our school and the efforts that we've made over the past few years to really bolster this program. To what it was prior to COVID really hurt in terms of our enrollment in our music program. And wanting to see it flourish, we were fortunate enough at the end of my second year in Portland to hire Scott Hilgendorf. And the number one feature that really brought us to selecting Hilgendorf to take the on to go with Denver Middle School was just his overwhelming passion and energy. And we thought he'd be a fantastic person to help rebuild and build out this program so it could flourish and have numbers where almost half the schools participating as it used to. So I'll introduce Mr. Hilgendorf, and he can share a little bit about a fantastic program he developed called the Cadet Program.
Hello, everyone. Really excited to be here. My name is Mr. Hilgendorf. A lot of the band kids this year have been affectionately calling me Hilgy. Can't imagine where that came from. But it's been a wonderful few years teaching here. And tonight, as Mr. Hirschman mentioned, we want to talk about the cadet program. So, Mr. Bernard, if we can get those slides up, whoever's in charge of those, that'll help me out a lot so I don't forget what I'm talking about. Thank you. What is a cadet? We talk about cadets a fair bit in the school, and sometimes someone says, what's that? What are you talking about? So, a cadet in our band program, next slide please, is simply just a new player who has not played in the band before and says, I really want to play, but I never have, and the youngest band you have is full of kids who have already played for 2 years. And the answer is, you make a program to make it work. So cadet comes from the military. A lot of terms in band come from the military just because marching band comes out of the military bands. So this is a term used in a lot of places. It avoids kind of the condescension from saying, oh, the beginning band, oh, the new players. So that's what we call them, because they are valued members of our ensembles. They're not just new players. They are important players, and we're really happy to have them. They've helped build our program back up to the numbers we have today. Can we move on, please? Thank you. We have numerous students who may be considered a cadet in the band. It's not all new players, although that is the primary purpose, is to serve players who have not played before and would like to play. Some cadets are students who did play prior but left the band for one reason or another and then decided to come back. Some of our most successful cadets have been students who played in 5th grade, didn't play in 6th grade, came back in 7th or 8th grade, and some of them even graduated out of the cadet program back into their regular sections and are playing at the high school now. So those are some great success stories of ours. Some students in the cadet program have played for their whole career in our school system, but needed remediation on basic instrument techniques or on music reading. Somehow or another, they slipped through the cracks, they fell behind. And so they can opt into the cadet program to get that kind of help until they don't need it anymore. That's been a real boon of having this, is that we can serve those students in a way that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Finally, students who have specialized learning needs or specialized learning plans can get some of that same extra help from our cadet program, and they can also opt into that if that is what they decide they need. Next slide, please. Thank you. What our program does, since we don't have an actual beginning band ensemble itself, band can be extremely overwhelming if you just learned to make your first sound yesterday and the kids next to you are playing eighth notes. Well, shoot, I don't know what to do. So here are the tools that we use to help make the program a success. The first and primary one is they have their own lesson group. So for those of you who don't know, at the middle school level, because our full band classes are a little on the short side, we subsidize that by having band pull-out lessons. Usually that is in the form of your instrument group. So, you know, you're a flute player, okay, well the flute lessons are meeting on the second half of D block today, flutes please come by. Saxophones have their saxophone lesson group. Cadets instead are in a heterogeneous instrument group for new players, and we get to focus on sound production and increase of range and how to read notes and rhythms and all those fundamental skills that will help them to be successful in the regular band room. That is the primary focus of the cadet program, was to have that spot for them. Those lessons can be short and only happen once every 6 school days, so to supplement that, optionally but highly encouraged, after school we have Thursday cadet lessons for an hour. And it's that same thing but bigger and more focused and longer. And so kids who are able to can come and get instruction from me. I'll float around and help all the kids who are there. They get time to practice, so if they play a loud instrument or they can't get it home easily, they can practice that way also. Those are the 2 primary tenets of the cadet program. In addition to that, implementing officially starting this year, it was unofficial in the last couple of years, but I watched the kids do it naturally and decided it was a genius idea. Alex will talk about this in a second because he's partially to blame for it, is the buddy system. If you are brand new and this person next to you is an experienced player and is willing to help you, then, oh, I don't know what that fingering is. Okay, well, instead of taking 5 minutes looking through your fingering chart trying to find it, I'll just show you. So this year, the 7th graders, I'm officially buddying up. Hey, you're buddied with you. Hey, you're buddied with you. Everyone who's a cadet, find someone in your section who's an experienced player to help you every rehearsal, please. And so it was watching last year's 7th grade band, this year's 8th grade band do that. That inspired me to make that choice, and it's been very helpful. I didn't have to set up buddies for this year's 8th grade cadets because they already did it on their own. So good for them. And of course, we have modified performance expectations. Anytime you bring someone into a class who does not have the requisite experience for that class, you have to adjust how you assess those students. Sometimes that just means if we're having a playing quiz, I'm lenient. You can miss more notes and more rhythms, and I will not give you a bad grade for it. Sometimes it means we modify the part they're playing at the concert. Everyone else is playing this. You're still working on these skills. You haven't mastered them yet that allow you to play this, so we're going to adjust this to be within your reach. Sometimes it means, hey, you're focused on this section of the piece. You're going to lay out here for a second, and then you'll come back in here when we get to the part you recognize. It's different depending on the student, because they all learn at their own pace and at their own needs, but that's the other tenet of the cadet program. And so with these ways, we've been able to allow new students to join the band, even though we don't have the regular ensemble for it. It's been really helpful. Next slide, please. So Lily and Alex are here tonight. They are a couple of our cadets. They both joined us in the 7th grade and are still playing with us in the 8th grade. So they must like something about us. They like us enough to have come to speak to you tonight. So I really appreciate them being here. And they have some things to say to you. So Lily, if you'll come up and tell them your experience.
My name is Lily. I'm in 8th grade now, but I started cadet in 7th grade. I wanted to do band in Brownstone, but the music teacher didn't let me. I was mad. I wanted to play in the band. When I went to middle school, Mr. Hilgendorf said I could join cadet. I went every week. I also went to band with my baritone. It was hard at first, and then I got better at it, and now it's super easy. I love playing the baritone, and I'm great at it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lily. Alex Cody's going to come talk to you next. Like Lily, Alex joined in 7th grade and is now a valued member of our 8th grade band program, and he'd like to say a few words to you.
Hi, I'm Alex Cody, and I really enjoy the cadet program because we all do specialized learning groups, and we all get to learn at our own pace. And in our band, all the cadets are treated the same, and we have an amazing community. And with the buddy system, as mentioned before, I helped start it, and I really enjoy it.
Thank you, Alex. Alex isn't kidding about that. It was mostly the saxophone section that I looked at last year and said, oh, they're really working together to help the new players. We should all do that. So thank you, Alex, for inspiring me to do that and to help improve the program. And thank you both for agreeing to come out and speak tonight, because I know public speaking is like every middle schooler's worst nightmare. So you did great. I think we just have one more slide coming up here, if you will. One of our greatest indicators that shows that the cadet program has been a success, aside from students who have come and told us so, like they did tonight, is the boost in the numbers of the band program. As Mr. Hirschan said, I came and joined us here at Portland shortly after the COVID crisis, shall we say, and numbers in programs around the country were down. So the year before I came here and before we implemented the cadet program, we had 51 kids in the combined 7th and 8th grade band, which that's fewer than 25 kids in ensemble. It's pretty small. In my first year here in 2022, we implemented the program for the first time, and we boosted from 51 to 65 students. Last year, in our second year with the program, it really exploded, and we came up to 83, which is absolutely enormous and is really exciting. And we are maintaining those numbers and slightly growing. This year we have 86, and we have really a record number of cadets in that group. We still have kids who are joining right now. Mr. H, I would like to join the band. Can I do that? Absolutely. So we have some kids who are coming to after-school Thursday sessions to get the handle of it before they enroll in the band officially, and that will boost the numbers yet further. So it's been a very exciting program, and it's building up that community that Alex mentioned that we like so much, because band's a family, as I think both our students here on the board tonight can tell you. It's very special. Does anyone have any questions? That's our last slide, I think. Yeah, please.
Is the program something unique to Portland, or is it an idea that we're bringing in when we hired? Like, have we had experience?
That's a good question. I have never worked in a program that did not allow new players, mostly because I would not work in a program that did not allow new players. Whether it's allowed really depends on the district. Some more old-fashioned directors say, no, you need to have experience. Maybe they'll say if you get private lessons, you can join the band, or in special circumstances. Some places have a special program like this, which is where I got some of the ideas from. Some places it's less formal. It's just, sure, you can join the band, but good luck, practice hard. And I didn't want to quite throw the kids to the fish like that. But I did look at other programs like this to help build some of these ideas. That's a good question.
Can I just add, I want to add that it was actually a question, when Ms. Hilgendorf was interviewed, one was, how would you differentiate for kids who never had music experience before? And he shared an experience that was similar to cadets, with the idea of working with students, partnering, and it was something that was really attractive to us. My previous district I worked in, the way for students to get involved in the middle school band, if they hadn't had the 2 to 3 years of elementary experience, that was the continuity in the district, was incredibly inequitable. It was to make sure that you have evidence of a year of private lessons, or lessons in the community at a local music shop. That's something that had been a practice in a lot of communities and districts. Just because of the difficulty of resources at getting students up to speed in band. Their specialized instruments require specialized instruction, and the resources are expensive. It was incredible. I was incredibly excited when Jonathan came with this idea for putting the cadet program together, and seeing the growth in numbers for our students has been overwhelming. If you saw those numbers before, I'm going to put them in context in middle school. what he has done is grown our program from 25% of the of the school was in the band program to we are now at, with that 86 students, just a tick under 50% of our students at the middle school are in the band program. It is tremendous growth. And it only happens with equitable practices like finding ways to ensure that all kids have access to the music curriculum regardless of their previous experience. We have so many students that come to us new at the middle school, either through the open choice program. We have increased amounts of students that have been moving in. We had more students move into Portland at the middle school this year than I've had in my 5 years combined. So it is something that is really paramount to have these types of programs ready to help support kids so they get equitable access to music instruction. And hopefully it's going to continue to build our music program to the shining star that I know it is and becomes, that we like to highlight each year.
I do have a question about instruments and
Yes.
how available they are. If students are struggling, is there funding for?
That is a great question. We do have a library of school-owned instruments. Some of them work. A lot of them need repair. We do have a repair budget for that, so we are working on getting those into better shape. But so far, any student who has needed an instrument, we have found a way to get them one. Sometimes that involves connecting with our new director at Brownstone, Ms. Chauncey, who was wonderful, by the way. I just did a trade with her last week, 2 trumpets for a baritone, because I needed a baritone and she needed trumpets, and we had what the other needed. We are currently, the music boosters are actually exploring ways to get more instruments because our program is growing. And with that, of course, naturally, the number of kids who need instruments grows. So far we've been okay, but we're kind of hitting our limit this year, so we are working
Yeah,
on
with
finding
all
those
the
things.
kids' interest
One of
in
those
it.
things will be you getting a budget request from me shortly to repair some instruments. And others will be the music boosters working on ways to get donations of instruments from people who
donations,
have
okay.
graduated and don't play
The
anymore.
other question I have is open choice kids, and I love
Yeah.
the fact that if kids can't practice at home, because sometimes that's a problem. They live in
Yes.
an apartment or 2-family house, and the neighbors aren't gonna be willing to listen to somebody beating on the drums or playing, loud instruments. But the open choice kids, do they have an opportunity to stay on Thursday night if they want to?
They do. That is what our late bus is for. So
A late
just like
bus,
you can
okay.
catch a late bus after a sporting event, you can catch a late bus and you can stay for cadet lessons. It is obviously not, you have to wait a little bit for the bus to arrive.
Right.
But we have that availability.
Okay.
In fact, I was speaking to a student just today who was interested in joining the band, and we were talking about, well,
Wonderful.
I live in Hartford, and how am I gonna make this work?
Right, okay.
We do absolutely everything we can to make sure every kid gets to play.
That's what education's
There-
about. I mean,
there
we're
are-
Very
doing,
appreciative of the board's support of our supply budget each year for the
Yes.
music department, so that we can continue to repair and maintain these instruments.
It's very important.
yeah.
Music is unfortunately in a lot of places a discipline that is gate kept by access to money. You need to be able to rent an instrument. If you haven't joined band on time, you have to get private lessons, which cost an arm and a leg. They're very expensive. And I don't like that. We really can't afford to have any of our programs to be barred by monetary needs. So Mr. Hirschman has been very good at supporting our program and making sure we get what we need for that, so that, our new kid who wants to play the baritone, which is expensive, can play the baritone. Usually when someone joins, the question is, can you afford to rent your own instrument? If so, please do, so that our other kids in need can use their school instruments. If you cannot afford to rent the instrument, please let me know. We will make sure we get you something.
Wonderful.
Are there any other questions?
I just want to say thank you so much. It's great to hear how you're making this equitable and inclusive for all students. And thank you to Lily and Alex for coming and speaking with us
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah, nice job.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great night,
you.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for your time.
Wow. Equity.
And I do feel compelled to say, you don't need to feel like you need to stay for the remainder of the meeting unless you want to, but please feel free to leave. All right.
Proud parents. Oh, they're gonna take pictures. Good.
Yeah, good, they're getting a photo.
Lovely.
Excellent, that is so wonderful. What a great spotlight. We're gonna move on to our student representative report, and I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Last Thursday, we had our open house, which was very successful. A lot of fundraisers going on. I believe they did well. Today was picture day here at the high school, And today, speaking of music, a select few musicians from the band and chorus went to Shorelines, which is a music festival. This year it's held at Coggin. We meet, practice for a few hours, and then next week we have a concert.
It's an amazing
Excellent.
concert. Is that at Coggin?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so are you playing with students from Coggin? Is it a?
It's from students from all over Shoreline District, like with the athletic conference.
Okay. Nice.
The Homecoming Spirit Week, which leads up to our annual dance, will be held on October 15th through the 18th. Typical Spirit days in the past have included Adam Sandler Day, Country versus Country Club, Anything But a Backpack Day, Red and Black Day, and much more leading up to our Spirit Day. After a long wait, the annual PHS musical has been announced. I'm excited to report that this year's musical is Anything Goes. In case you didn't know, this production takes place on a boat heading from New York to England. It features characters who are entangled in drama, romance, crime, elaborate disguises, and even blackmailing. There is something for everyone within this production, and we are so excited to see how it turns out, especially with the middle schoolers this year. On the other hand, fall sports are heading into the last half of their seasons. Upcoming sporting events include the Girls Soccer Breast Cancer Awareness Game on October 3rd, where you can purchase a bracelet to support the Cancer Foundation. The game starts at 6 o'clock, and it is recommended that you wear pink. The cross-country team is traveling to their annual overnight trip in Thetford, Vermont. These students are leaving this Friday in order to participate in the race on Saturday. I would like to wish good luck to all sports for the rest of their seasons.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for our student reps?
What,
Yeah.
do you know what the dates for the play this year?
I
Have they
don't
set that yet?
believe they've announced yet because we
Yeah.
haven't had additions yet, but I'm sure there'll be more to come.
Yeah.
So I'll let you know.
That's good, that's exciting. Sounds like-
Usually middle of March, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
March.
Right around the 20th, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
okay,
Whatever that weekend is.
all right.
Save the date.
Unofficially.
You want to hold each other.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions? No? All right. We'll move on to communications and updates. Dr. Britton.
All right. So tonight I have some not so good things, some meh things, and then I have some good things to share with everybody. So maybe I'll start with some of the not so good things. And one of them was a scary experience happened in East Hampton today. Still don't have all of the details of it, but something appeared to happen at one of their middle schools, scared a whole lot of people, got a lot of people mobilized, and at some point, it was a frightening thing. Again, I just am only aware of some of the details of what happened from the news reports, but it did, influence our community, and I want to start by extending appreciation to the Portland Police Department. So Scott Cunningham from the Portland Police Department was on the phone with me, because we were curious. We had some of our students with East Hampton students at Coggin. We had high school had dismissed or was in the process of dismissing, and we were hearing that maybe somebody was fleeing from East Hampton, and a lot of it was fueled by, I think, social media chatter, which isn't always the most reliable source. But Scott was on the phone with me pretty quickly, and one of the officers from Portland had gone to East Hampton to assist with the mutual aid agreements that they have, and was reporting back and letting Scott know, who was letting me know that things were under control and that there appeared to have been some false alarms maybe, and some things that were being reported on social media that weren't completely accurate. So thank you to Scott and the Portland Police Department for communicating with me very clearly in terms of what was actually happening, which again, they didn't know exactly either, but I felt confident enough that we didn't need to make any shelter in places or take any extra precautions here in town during that incident. Although, Sarah, I did key in on some of your texts today. Did you get any response from Portland about whether they might need some help from maybe our clinicians to go over there in the morning to help them deal with some of that very challenging?
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
So I've been in contact with Rodney Mosier, who's the Director of Student Services over in East Hampton, and we have two of our clinicians, Krista Salvatore and Sam Starr, who will be supporting one of their elementary schools tomorrow. They had asked for one additional clinician. They also have folks coming from East Haddam and other surrounding communities, and they just needed 2 more folks to cover that elementary, so they'll be working with them throughout the week as needed.
Right, and that would just be to help the kids process what happened. It was scary, right? I mean, anytime you hear of a legitimate threat that might be happening, it scares people terribly. So, that we can help people, and hopefully they'll go and they won't need there, but, I think it's very nice that we're able to, offer that level of support to our neighbors. So, thank you for that.
So did it happen at the elementary school if we're sending
Middle,
clinicians?
middle
to-
school.
Then why are we sending?
All schools ended up with a shelter-in-place
all schools
situation
ended
in
up-
East
so even though
Hampton.
the incident was occurring in one,
Yeah.
they sheltered in place for all of the schools.
Right, and we would do the same thing. If we had a lockdown at one of our schools, our other schools at minimum would shelter in place,
Okay.
but potentially lock down if the threat wasn't contained.
Mhm.
So if any of our friends in East Hampton are listening, we're glad you're okay. We imagine that was a pretty terrifying experience. Sorry that it happened, glad everything's fine, and I'm happy that we're able to offer some help as best we can.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No. Okay. So staying in the maybe not so good news reports, I did share with you 2 resignations. One, a paraprofessional, Heather Slinsky, has offered her resignation, and then I'm very sad to see Kaylee Smith go. Kaylee is an English teacher right across the hall here. It was great. Came on board, started our writing center. One of the most fabulous English teachers I've ever worked with. She got her degree as a certification as a library media specialist, and is going to become a librarian. I think it's in Montville that she's going to become a librarian. So we wish Kaylee and Heather well and thank them for their service here in town.
Wonderful.
Okay, the 2 kind of meh things, middle of the road things, though important, I did include the most recent enrollment report. We're at 214 students, up about 7, but you see our class sizes and outplacements and our open choice enrollment reflected in this data here. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about our current enrollment. And that's the big one. The October 1 enrollment is the one we report to the state that determines things like our ECS funding and has other important implications.
Okay.
Good?
Looks good.
Okay, let me stay in the meh area and then I'll get to the good. I did include, I attended, and I know Sarah did too, a legal webinar run by attorneys from Shipman and Goodwin. And what they did, you see the date on it, is September 17th. They pulled together all of the laws that were passed during the short session, though they were very busy during the short session. There are lots of statutory changes that are affecting us. Just to remind you how this works, and Angela, this might be new for you. What happens is the legislature will often pass the laws. Shipman and Goodwin will update or provide the education about what those laws changes are and the implications to the leadership team, and we'll make sure we follow the law. And then what I guarantee will happen is likely in the next CABE policy update that Tim, Meg, and Laurel and I get for the policy committee, I'm sure you'll see a lot of these changes in state statute and legislation reflected in recommendations that are coming from CABE about where and how we update our board policies. I don't think many of these are new policies, but a lot of them we'll have to go back through our existing policy to update them. Although I will point out we're already ahead of the game. 2 big changes in here are reflected in the climate policy that you're looking at tonight, and the Title IX policy and regulations are also, you'll see if you dig through that slide deck there, are included. So both of those we're already on top of. The other changes that are reflected in here, I'm sure we'll be talking about at policy committee, and you'll likely see as first reads sometime this winter or late fall.
And it's good because CABE also does a legislative update, which is, it seems like everybody's in the business, but it's good because then we know that it's been vetted by CABE and their attorneys, and then Shipman and Goodwin also attorneys are looking at it. So we're getting really good guidance when it comes to writing and accepting policies and bringing them forward from the policy committee.
Yeah. So that's kind of the circle of
It is a
life.
circle,
And
yeah.
this is the legislature will take action, it'll show up in these legal briefs, which I always try to make sure you're aware of, and then it will be reflected in board policy too. But as soon as it's passed into law, we don't wait for board policy, we follow the law.
Well, some of it just has
Yeah.
mandates that it has to be done, so you just have to do it.
Just have to do it, right.
And, yeah, so it's good.
Good. So I thought you might be interested in that. It's lengthy, it's a lot, 76 slides there. So if you're looking for some bedtime
Light
reading, maybe feel free to take a look. But otherwise, I'm confident we're on top of all of these and are going to make the adjustments. Now for the good. So I shared
Oh,
two
it's
things
getting
with
better,
you.
good.
One is straight hot off the press, October 1. We did get a press release from Miss Lawson, and congratulations to Amelia Dietrichson for being named a commended scholar as part of the 2025 National Merit Scholar Program.
Wonderful.
So thought you'd see that. That was great. Congratulations, both Portland High School for doing a great job with Amelia and to Amelia for her accomplishment.
That's great.
And congratulations, Laurel. I included the communication that we got from CABE. Congratulations, you have earned CABE's Certified Board of Education Member designation, and I understand this is quite a credit. I'm not sure how long did it take you to get all these
I've
credits?
been on the board almost 6 years, so it's slow and steady.
Good, good.
Yeah, and it's all the leadership and workshops that Laurel has attended and the positions that she has taken at CAVE as well to do the resolution committee. So it's actually 20 hours, I believe, or
Yeah,
40 hours.
20 credits. You
20
got it.
credits.
Board relations, policy, curriculum, school finance, school law, labor relations, board operations.
Welcome to the club.
So,
Yeah.
congratulations.
It's awesome.
I'm sure that was a lot of work, but I bet you learned a lot out of it. And
That's why I keep going back. I learn something every time I go
Yeah,
to a
good.
CABE workshop, for sure.
good. Well, congratulations. That reflects well on all of us. So I thought you'd include that in the board packet and commend you
Good,
for
no,
it.
absolutely. Very important.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Charles. Next on our agenda, we have our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Technology with our monthly update.
Eric here is
We
down
do
low.
have Eric here.
Eric,
Yeah,
yep.
you're up, sir.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So a couple things. You'll notice my report is still following the same format, but it lists the goals, and then I started reporting out on the objectives that are in the TACO plan that you're going to hear about tonight. So it's a little bit out of order in terms of the presentation, and I know there's tacos on the menu, so I'm just going to update a few things here. So first, we did receive, under kind of our talent management goal, we received feedback over the summer on our increasing educator diversity plan. I've expressed my frustrations with that plan as a mandate and also the template with which we were given to write that plan in the past. The feedback we received didn't cool my frustrations at all. We received what's called conditional approval. We need to make some changes to our plan or some revisions. But the feedback we received didn't stipulate the revisions we need to make. It just gave us things we might consider. The plan is also, the feedback we received is also that we need to set hiring targets or diversity targets in the form of SMART goals. I don't think that's a smart move. This is a public-facing document. It's an employment plan, and while we're looking to increase diversity, it really skirts the line of race quotas. So this has become a contentious issue around these plans. I attended a webinar from the state. The question was asked, if we've been given legal counsel to not set SMART goals around educator diversity plans, what would you advise? We have not been given that legal counsel. We've not asked for it, but the answer was of interest nonetheless. And there were two representatives from the state on the call that said conflicting things. One said, I think that's good legal advice and I wouldn't do it. See what happened at Harvard with their admissions plans and how that was overturned along lines of race quota. And then another person from the state said, well, we asked for SMART goals and we're going to require SMART goals. So I'm continuing to work with the state around what those revisions might look like. Revisions are due to the state on November 1st. My plan is to revise the plan and bring those revisions forward at our November board meeting. So I'll be asking for an extension from the state before submitting any revisions. I just want to make sure that we get this right. We did receive feedback that there's a lot of good things within our plan. So the conditional approval was mostly good, and then some kind of weird feedback from there that I'm continuing to comb through. So just an update on that. Our PDEC committee. So as you know, the PDEC committee developed and has helped to launch our new educator and administrator growth and support plans. We're now in the implementation phase of those plans. We've provided orientation and follow-up support training to all of our educators and administrators operating under those plans. Our educators are now preparing for their goal-setting meetings. And a key part of that new to this plan is that they have to develop a professional learning plan. And that becomes the onus of their evaluation, in addition to classroom observations. At the administrative level, we're working to calibrate what constitutes a good professional learning plan. We're looking at samples. I've created some examples and non-examples for administrators that we're working through together. We're also doing things like seeking feedback from one another. A couple of our administrators have asked me to attend goal-setting meetings with them or to sit in on meetings that I facilitate. Another feature of our plan is mini classroom observations with 1,000-character feedback. Dr. Britton made rounds across all of our buildings with our principals to calibrate instructional lenses and what that feedback might look like. As a leadership team, we've looked at examples of 1,000-character feedback that came to us from Kim Marshall, whose model we followed in adopting that system. And we just continue to get on the same page as administrators so that for our educators, our practices look consistent. And then for our educators, we're just working as diligently as possible to provide them the support they need, to give them resources towards the development of their professional learning plans. So far, the feedback's been good. There haven't been any concerns or extensive questions asked. So we're eager to get through goal-setting meetings and to evaluate where we stand. The PDEC committee is looking at developing feedback metrics to use this year so that we can get feedback from educators and administrators on how well the plan is working and any changes that we might need to make moving forward. This is a living plan, so we look at this year as version 1.0, and we know we'll make some changes next year for version 2.0. K-3 literacy, so I'm moving into academics now under our academics goal. You know, we've talked about this at length, the imperative to adopt a new curricular program or model for K-3 literacy. We're into our 4th week of a 6-week pilot of HMH into reading. We've been providing our teachers extensive and ongoing support around that pilot. The program is landing well with teachers. We're at the point in our pilot, I just sent out a survey today where we need to make a decision, and that decision is, do we continue forward with Into Reading for the remainder of the year? Or do we stop our use of Into Reading at the end of the 6 weeks, revert back to previous curriculum, and explore for pilot another program or model? The early returns on that survey, and they're very early, is that teachers that have responded have been unanimous in their support of continuing with Into Reading. As a reminder to the board, we have $47,000 in grant money that we must spend by the end of this academic year. That money will help to offset costs associated with continuing with Into Reading this year. So the pilot will be in implementation at the end of 6 weeks, should the survey point in that direction, which again, it looks like it will. And then remaining funds would be used to offset purchase of that program for full implementation next year. That will be a sizable increase to the LEA budget. I'm working on figures right now. With budgetary offset, we're probably looking at somewhere in year 1 costs around $30,000, and then annual cost of about $50,000 to maintain. And this was some of the controversy around the legislative mandate to adopt these models and programs, that this was effectively a bill pushed on to municipalities, but our position is teaching kids to read and to read well and to read on grade level by the end of K-3 is of the utmost importance. It's one of our foremost academic goals, and it's worth the price tag.
Can I just ask, Eric,
Yep.
because I didn't hear, when you said the annual cost, did you say 50 or 15?
At the highest end, 50.
50
so
annually.
It may not be that much, but I'm trying to prepare the board for what might be the high water mark. This is a program that carries a lot of student consumables. At early grades, it is about workbooks and it is about consumables. We could always choose to forego those materials and ask teachers to print things and make photocopies, but you end up paying the same, if not more, in photocopier maintenance and toner and copier paper, and it's time that teachers are spending at the copy machine instead of
Yep.
instructing, assessing, and supporting students.
Eric, just to give the board a little context, can you give us, what does it cost for our Bridges workbook materials? And in comparison to Reader's workshop materials, what were the costs of those two things? 'Cause again, just to give the board a sense.
Bridges
Not
doesn't
sticker
have
shock there, right?
a high amount of consumable costs, and our teachers, we've been working with that program long enough, as they'll find with Into Reading over time, where they know what we need in consumables and they know what we can forego and photocopy. But the initial costs of Bridges were $25,000 to $30,000 a year. The initial startup cost of Teachers College was incredible. That was before the time I was here, but I know that a Gildersleeve grant was written at the time to, I believe, the tune of $80,000 to $100,000 to outfit classroom libraries, teacher resources. So there are startup costs that diminish over time as we get our feet under us with a program and learn where we can, I don't want to take shortcuts, but take financial shortcuts, if you will, through photocopying or forgoing certain components of the program. But when you're operating it with fidelity, you're starting a program, that first year or two of implementation costs are going to be high. Again, we have a little bit of grant money to offset, so that the $50,000 would be $50,000 high water mark minus whatever money we have in reserve left over from the grant. And I'm doing everything I can to work with the vendor to preserve as much of that grant money as possible and get as much of the stuff as we can for this year for free or deeply discounted under a good faith agreement that we're trending towards implementing this program fully next year and for many years beyond.
Eric, is there a lot of software components to this?
There is a digital
license-
subscription. The program, everything that's available physically is available through digital license. So again, over time, that could become an avenue for our teachers to utilize digital materials. We want to be careful that we're not putting kids on screen time, because that's a trade-off as well. And then there's also more robust resources as part of their digital platform in addition to what the physical materials are.
And the other question I have is with buying the components and the workbooks, for any remediation, is there an associated program that we would be using for the reading consultants to do tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 interventions, and is there more money involved in?
Not initially. So there are differentiated options within the program. We already have a couple of special education teachers working with the Into Reading program to provide special education instruction and alignment.
Right.
We've also found that materials we already own that would be of no additional cost, like Foundations and Hegarty, do mesh well with this program at lower tiers of intervention.
That's what I was concerned with. Thank you.
Sure.
Following on Charles's question, just comparatively, how does Into Reading cost compare with like the 6 other options the state offered?
It wasn't the most expensive. We pretty quickly, we did some initial quote gathering and we quickly eliminated the 2 most expensive. One of the programs, Savvis My Learning, carried a price tag of $120,000 for a single year of implementation. So we were towing the line of cost versus quality, and Into Reading met somewhere in the middle of the 7 programs. Tim?
Yeah, but, is there a net here? I mean, we pay for curriculum materials now for reading. Are there things we're not gonna have to purchase and things we're not gonna have to get that will defray some of the costs for this new program?
Because we had been, I don't want to say piecemealing our curriculum, we weren't laying out large sums of money for curricular materials we already had in place. We had Foundations, workbooks, maybe maximum to the tune of $10,000 across our schools. So if we do hit that high water mark of 50, and again, I'm kind of going shock and awe there to prepare you for what the top number might be, it'll likely come in at less, but you're looking at net 40.
That's helpful.
And again, there's no way around it. You know, this was one of the major pushbacks at the state is you just passed a massive bill onto municipalities, to which the state's response, and we do agree with it, is that K-3 literacy is of the utmost importance. We can look at a lot of metrics across education and society at large that point to the importance of students reading on grade level at the end of grade 3.
So I have one more question.
Sure.
So K-3, we've got it covered, we've got this program, it's piloting, we're gonna implement it. 3, 4, 5, 6, or 4, 5, 6 kids that are still not reading that, came through all the piecemeal programming that we did. Is there something that this particular company is doing for that next level?
So Into Reading is a curriculum that continues up through grade 8. If there was sufficient interest and capacity in the district to explore use of a single curricular program beyond grade 3, we could consider it over time. It's important to note that foundational literacy skills around which the science of reading is built, those standards end at grade 3. So we have a couple of things working in our favor beyond grade 3. In grade 3, beginning in grade 3, we're specialized in that we have reading teachers and math teachers and social studies science teachers. So in grades 4 and up, we have specialized teachers who are, because they're not teaching everything, they know a content area more deeply and they're better positioned to write homegrown curriculum. And we believe in our capacity to write homegrown curriculum at those grade levels.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not to say we didn't believe in our capacity to do it K-3. There was a legislative mandate that prohibited us from doing that.
Yep.
And that's where the conundrum is, but.
We wouldn't be
we're marching
opposed to
forward.
looking at it. There's benefit to a singular program. There's consistency of structures and routines, but there's a price tag involved. As director of curriculum, I would say there's also few things that improve the quality of teaching more than writing curriculum. It's a chance to deeply get to know your standards, to understand how to structure units and lessons towards intended outcomes. So I would hate to take that opportunity away from our teachers, and they're doing great work in the writing of our curriculum in grades 4 and up.
And the only criticism I've heard about curriculum writing is in very small districts that don't have the capacity or the money to do that. So, I mean, we do make a big effort to make sure that we do curriculum writing in the summer. And I think that's been one of a wonderful things that Portland has done.
Well, actually, under my direction, we've gone to a release day model where every vertical curriculum writing team is now getting 3 release days during the school year, which is 18 guaranteed hours of curriculum writing for every teacher that writes curriculum under the guidance of a highly trained curriculum specialist. So I'm really proud of that model here. I think it also, prevents maybe alternatively the necessity of turning to canned or scripted programs while building teacher capacity. So I would never say never to beyond grade 3, but we don't have quite the urgency beyond grade 3 via legislative mandate and also greater teacher capacity and specialization.
That's a good point.
Good point.
All right, just going to turn us ahead. I'm just going to give a couple more highlights here. Artificial intelligence. So I had informed the board that as part of our convocation, we had a keynote speaker, Matt Mervis, in from Ed Advance to deliver a keynote address on the power and potential of artificial intelligence in education, including the ability to make teachers work smarter, not harder, or more efficient, if you will. That we offered breakout sessions to teachers, very, very well received. At the current time, artificial intelligence is not available for approved student use in Portland Public Schools. In the spring, Dr. Britton and I applied to the Gildersleeve Grant Foundation for a grant to advance the use of AI in Portland, and we were, thankfully, awarded $15,000. We used some of that money to pay for Mr. Mervis's services at convocation. We're also using that money to launch and fund an AI steering committee in the district that'll meet for the first time on October 10th. I'm retaining the services of Mr. Mervis for consultation on how to best facilitate that committee. He's given me a ton of great guidance. He won't be present at our first meeting, but he's helped me to plan what that agenda should look like. And we kind of have him on retainer, both for guidance and attendance or facilitation of future meetings. Mr. Mervis, in partnership with one of his associates at Ed Advance, Dr. Liz Rede, also an expert on AI, has partnered with Southern Connecticut State University to offer a micro-credential on AI specifically for educators. We put out a call of interest to teachers. We had 5 teachers express interest, and we're going to use Gildersleeve grant money to pay for those teachers to earn a micro-credential in artificial intelligence. The tuition cost for that 6-week self-paced course is $500 per educator, and we're going to pay for it using Gildersleeve grant funds. That will give us a cadre of teachers who have advanced training in the use of AI and can then turnkey that training to other members of our staff. Just to jump back for a moment quickly to the AI Steering Committee, when we meet on the 10th, we have 7 interested PPS educators and administrators who've committed to joining the steering committee, and most significantly, a minimum of 3 Portland High School students who will serve on that committee.
4 National Honor Society and 1 Senate member as of 5 minutes ago.
So even better news. The
That's
last time
great.
I knew was 3, now we're up to 5. And really the most immediate charge of that committee will be to develop ethical use guidelines that allow us to train students and open up AI to use for students within their academic classes. Sarah?
Of the 5 educators receiving a micro-credential, are they spread across the school?
They are. So we have 2 library media specialists, an elementary teacher, a special education teacher, and a high school teacher. You're welcome. And we were willing to fund up to a team of 6. I begged for a 6th. I'm still begging. So far we have 5, and that micro-credential opportunity is slated to start later this month. School attendance. So Dr. Britton and I worked closely towards the tail end of last year and with a lot of input from the leadership team to build out some proposed chronic absenteeism protocols with the goal of better supporting our students and families towards improved rates of school attendance. In the 3 years since COVID and coming out of COVID, our chronic absenteeism rates in the district have been north of 14% to just under 15% a year. Before COVID, we were around 8 to 9% a year. So our first goal is to get back to pre-COVID rates of chronic absenteeism and make improvements from there. The way we're going to do that is through the development of specific chronic absenteeism protocols that yielded the launch of what we're calling the Portland Attendance Review Committee. So we identify students who are at risk of chronic absenteeism at 3 key points throughout the year. At each one of those points, we convene the committee. The committee consists of Dr. Britton, the school principal, school support staff, the nurse where needed, and/or special education staff, the director of student services where needed. We have a protocol-driven meeting that's based on asset mapping for the student and family. And through that meeting, we yield a corrective support plan for how we can best support more regular school attendance. That manifests in 1 commitment the school or district will make to the student and family, 1 commitment the family will make to improve their child's attendance, and 1 commitment the student will make. So we will be launching this protocol later this month. That's our first interval. Day 40, day 90, and day 140 are the rough intervals with which this attendance review committee will meet. And we're hopeful that through a couple of things, the weight of authority, Dr. Britton's authority, the authority of an attendance review committee, and through a process of asset or support mapping, we can provide, again, the goal is not to reduce chronic absenteeism. The goal is to provide students and families the supports they need to come to school more regularly and improve rates of attendance. So we're trying to take an asset-based approach, not a deficit-based approach, but to give it the seriousness it needs through the formulation of a specific protocol and a committee approach.
So how are the children identified?
They're identified by rates of absences leading up to those intervals. So our first interval occurs at day 40 of the school year. Chronic absenteeism is missing for any reason 10% or more of the school days in a given year. So this is a little quirky, but because we go 181 days a year in Portland, it would be 19 days a year. If you miss 19 days of school a year, you're chronically absent. At day 40, what that means is any student that's missed 10%, 4 days of school for any reason is chronically absent. Now that's a quick interval.
Yeah,
That's a wide net. That
you may have your
captures a
work cut
lot
out
of
for you.
kids at day 40. That's
Yeah.
1 bout of a substantial illness. So we use that first interval to identify students who have absence patterns of concern already and who have historical patterns of absence concern. Moving forward at day 90, it doesn't have to do only with history. It's any student who's missed at day 90 9 or more days of school, and then they're called into an attendance review committee meeting, and we work together with those families and that student to determine supports needed to get them here more regularly, to get them here more consistently.
And do you accept doctor notes? I mean, if somebody really is legitimately sick
Yeah,
and has
so
missed, is there
we
any
leave
exception
discretion
to?
in identifying students to send forward. We call it the PARC, the Portland Attendance Review Committee. First discretion is with principals of who to identify as needing to go to attendance review committee, because principals understand this is a student with special needs, or this is a student who had mono. So they'll know the reason behind the absences.
Right.
But we also support our principals, and if you have any questions or you're not sure, make the referral, and then we'll work together to kind of figure out what that referral should mean. moving
And in
forward.
addition to chronic absences, what about lateness? You know, kids who show up an hour late, you know.
We tend to leave that to our principals to address through our student codes of conduct and school-based measures. We look at chronic absenteeism as a district-level concern, because a couple of things. Oftentimes within a family, if one student is chronically absent and their siblings, those siblings are also chronically absent. So it tends to be a family support issue, not an individual student issue.
Right.
And the other reason is because if a student is chronically absent in their last year of school at Gildersleeve, they're likely to be chronically absent in their first year of school at Brownstone. So we try to remove it from, the review committee meetings are held in the school buildings. We find that works best for students and families. It's in the context of the school.
The school.
But it's a district level concern. It's a district level committee, and that's why Superintendent Britton sits on that committee.
Yeah.
Is this a proven methodology? Have other schools or districts been using it, started using this, or is
So-
this something new since the pandemic?
Attendance review committees are a proven practice. They're both a generally recommended practice and something I have firsthand experience with, in that we developed one in the previous district I worked with to good effect. So when we identified chronic absenteeism as a concern here needing an intervention, I brought forward that idea, we built a protocol around it, and we're gonna launch it. There's certainly other promising practices. We're looking into the possibility of home visits, for example. But home visits would be a support that we offer families. They're not an intervention on their own. So
Right.
we look at it as, let's meet, let's asset map, let's come up with a success plan together. It's really the same approach we take to students. We develop school safety plans or behavior plans, and all of those processes, it's about working with families and providing supports needed through a positive approach, not a deficit-based approach.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it also, attendance review committees are required if you have a certain level of chronic absenteeism, which I don't think we've reached in the state, but if you're in a district that has a certain, and I was just gonna try to find the number, X% of your students are chronically absent, then you are required to have an attendance review
I
committee.
think I read that.
Yeah.
I believe that number is over
The
25%.
LEAP program is funded.
Over
for
25%.
districts, and it's 25% and over.
Which we're at 14, which is still
Still
alarming. It's a
I'm-
high watermark for
I
us.
really appreciate that we're taking a proactive approach now to bring that number down before we get to a point where we require state intervention.
Correct,
you know?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, Laurel, yeah.
And part
the way
of
to
this
do it.
is, listen, we've built a culture coming out of COVID that if your child has the sniffles,
Yeah,
keep
that's
them
right.
home. We're now starting to work
Right.
again, if they're well enough to come to school, they should come to school. So
Yeah.
part of it is changing the psychology of families that were traumatized through fear of COVID, of what illness meant, and trying to do the best thing and thinking the best thing was keeping my child home.
Yeah.
So all of this, again, is the best remedy we find is combining the weight of authority with, an approach that's support-based.
And when a child is continuing to be absent in spite of all the positive support systems, what's the?
So the options that are really available to districts there, I mean, we hate to go this route, but there can be the possibility of educational neglect.
Right.
So we hate to refer to DCF in cases of education, where we suspect educational neglect. We never run to that opportunity, but we do it in protection of the child, right?
Also, juvenile review boards are available for that process as well.
Absolutely. I did forget to mention, we do plan to invite our youth services director to our attendance review committee meetings, because
Great.
sometimes the supports we may offer are local or beyond the capacity of the local school district. There may be community supports we can offer. They may be able to tap into different supports or services that we may not be aware of inside the school district. The same for open choice students. Our intent is to invite the open choice liaisons to those meetings as well.
Excellent.
You thought of everything. Good. Thank you.
Do you have information on what the statewide averages are for the Chronic Apps?
I can get that for you, not off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think
but-
I read it somewhere and I was trying to
Yeah.
remember what they were.
Look, I mean, definitively, they have gone way up since
Yeah.
COVID, and that's why the state has made such an attempt through like their LEAP program, if
Yeah.
you've heard about that, to arrest rates of chronic absenteeism. Like many things in the state, the rates of chronic absenteeism, the rates of emergent needs are highest in urban districts, and practices in urban districts are oftentimes different than practices in suburban districts. So the state has been pushing things like home visits to good effect in urban districts. We're just not there yet in Portland. It's
Right.
not to say we won't, but we're just attempting a slightly different starting point.
Tim, 17 to 18% is the number that's stuck in my head
Is
for
it-
the
is it- I
state,
knew it was
the
higher
state
than
rate.
that.
It's
Yeah,
higher.
it's slightly higher than where we are at,
Yeah.
and I,
Yeah.
that's the number that's stuck in my head.
Which is alarming. 1 out of 5,
I
1
wanna
out of
say
6,
29.
even 1 out of 7
29%.
students,
Yeah.
where we are in Portland
That
roughly
was
is,
29.
it's too high.
It's
We
too
wanna
high.
see that number immediately under 10% and then back it down from there.
Yeah.
You know, the ideal is 0.
It seems like this is a really good plan, and you've got, I like the steps that you've got laid out, and the way that you're really looking to wrap around and support families. I think that's,
I do too.
I look forward to seeing the impact on our absentee rates in future years.
Thank you. And if you're interested in the kind of nuts and bolts of the protocol, it is hyperlinked in my report, which will take you to a document that lays out exactly what we intend to do, the time frame. There's links to things like meeting templates, the letters we mail home to families to allow them to understand what chronic absenteeism is and to signal our concern ahead of those review board meetings. So the initial notification to families is sent from the school, and then the follow-up to schedule the meeting is sent from central office. So it's not, although the meeting occurs at the school building, it's actually scheduled through the superintendent's office, which again gives it that imperative, that weight of authority
Great.
or
Are
urgency.
children involved with extracurricular activities penalized in any way if their attendance is not up to par?
Well,
Or is that based more on an individual
for school and for athletic regulations, yes, they must be in attendance to participate in certain athletic events. Like, I can't not be in school and then play in the game that afternoon. Unless there were circumstances excusing the absence, but those are CIAC rules. At the local, school level, yes, there are policies, I think at the building level, around participation in extracurriculars, around attendance, and most importantly, academic performance, as is often connected to attendance.
Yeah.
We don't, again, at the district level, we don't prescribe those measures. Those are under the purview of our principals, our schools, our student codes of conduct. And then the last update I want to provide is just, again, we have talked at length about Chromebook replenishment in the district. No surprise, I have always beat the drum of the 25-26 budget will carry a large request. At one point, we assumed that request to be around 1,000 devices would be needed. Our IT department has worked incredibly hard to breathe life, new life, ongoing life into devices. We're not gonna be looking at 1,000 devices, but we will be looking at a request in this upcoming budget to get us on a regular replenishment cycle. We've talked about capital requests for Chromebook purchasing are not a sustainable plan. The goal for our district has always been to have as many devices as possible under warranty, which allows us to keep a thin IT staff to be able to repair devices with responsive turnaround times. The goal will be to get all new devices every year into the hands of a 5th grader and a 9th grader. Those devices last those students 4 years under warranty.
Yeah.
That's gonna be about 250 student use devices per year. And then the addition would be 15% of certified staff devices turned over each year. So I'll be bringing forward more information on that. I'm bringing it up now because we are critically low in our Chromebook reserves. We are not that far away. I was down with the IT team looking at the stores of reserves. If a high school student's Chromebook was to need repair, we are not that far away from that student being without a device, not a lesser than device, literally without a device until we can make repair of their device. And our high school devices suffer a lot of damage. a lot of wear and tear.
I don't think that's acceptable, right? Or what can we do?
We can fund our Chromebook replenishment cycle. So those requests have been cut for the past several years within our budget, and we've been making do. We've kicked the can as far down the road as we can kick it. So I'm letting the board know that I will be bringing that request forward this year with an imperative that we make that purchase and commit to that regular replenishment cycle. Even if we make decisions about should first graders have one-to-one devices, it doesn't change the imperative to have warranted devices in the hands of students in grades 5 through 12 where they're traveling to and from our buildings every day, suffering wear and tear. So I'm just previewing that to the board tonight. You'll hear much more about it, but you'll probably hear a little bit about it in every report I make moving forward because it's of that level of importance. And I know we've had to make tough budget decisions. We haven't gladly cut that. But there's no more fat on the bone, unfortunately.
Question about that. If we did move to change from a one-to-one policy, maybe below fifth grade, like fourth and below, would that in any way impact the budget request for next year?
It would not, because the issue is we want devices under warranty. What we're already kicking down to grades below 4, whether they're one-to-one or not one-to-one, are off warranty devices. That's what's within our IT team's capacity to repair. Even 512 devices, we don't send them out for repair when we don't have to. Like, even if they're under warranty, sometimes it's just quicker for us to make the repair in-house and turn it around. But again, remember, our IT staff for about 1,500 total devices, just laptop devices, not counting projectors and smart boards and desktops, is 3 individuals. So we're taxed. We gotta commit to this. Which I know has been our intent for a while, but I think it's something that really requires funding moving forward.
Eric, did you skip the Equity and Inclusion Coalition?
I didn't update everything in here just for sake of time. We did have what I thought was maybe our best equity and inclusion meeting ever the other night. We had 7 students attend, which was a high water mark for us. We're working towards the development of a civil discourse framework. I think you'll hear probably board members maybe reference that meeting during updates later. We're getting our feet under us with what constitutes civil discourse, just like we did with the equity statement, giving a definition to it in Portland Public Schools, and then developing the behaviors we have to live into in order to have civil discourse. So this coalition meets every other month. We'd hope to have this in place for piloting before the election. But the reality is, before an election, during an election, after an election, in between elections, we could do well to advance civil discourse at any time in the district. And we're going to take our time and do it right. And I think our first coalition meeting was an important step towards getting a document produced in the near future.
That's great.
Just a curiosity, I went on Ed's site, which is got the data for chronic absentee. The state, because they have done that LEAP program, it went from 12% before COVID, it went up to 23%, and last year was, the 2022-23 was 20%, it's come down to 17.7. So it is coming down, so the efforts to make kids, give them the support so they will come to school is really paying off. And I think you've got a good program that's positive
Thank
in
you,
that
and
respect.
thanks for that, Dana.
So, yeah. But it's still 86,000 kids who don't come to school.
We're acting with intentionality. Our bet is that our protocol will pay dividends. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. We're not gonna abandon it. We're gonna get the numbers down by any means necessary.
Well, we want kids in school,
That's right.
basically.
We'll buy more vans if we have to. Just kidding.
Yeah, those vans look really good.
I'm just kidding. We'll build vans.
There you go. Build, baby, build, right?
Perfect.
Great CTE department.
That's right.
We do have a
Tyler
great
Richards
CTE
Welding
department.
Lab.
Oh, boy.
That's
Seriously.
right. We can do
Are there
anything.
any other questions for Eric about his report?
Great.
No? This is great. Thank you so much, Eric. Very thorough, as always, and very appreciated. All right, we're going to move on to the next. This is another big ticket item, folks. We've got 5 taco plans to talk through.
Yeah, so I mean, just What's interesting about these taco plans is any single box on any single one of these taco plans could be a many-hour seminar in terms of what we're doing it. So maybe I'll suggest that the principals are all here, we have them come up, as opposed to more lengthy presentations, to see if there are any questions that you have about them or any particular areas that you want to review.
Yeah.
So we'll start maybe with, I think Ryan is online tonight. As you know, Ryan was not here last time, but, you know, if there are any questions about the Valley View taco plan, if we can maybe unmute Ryan and.
Ryan might have lost connection, he's not currently
Oh,
on.
no, okay, well,
We'll come
we'll
back
skip
to him.
Ryan. We'll loop back and strike two. So maybe then, if we have Chuck come on up and we'll see if there are any questions for Chuck about the vision he has laid out for the middle school this year, as reflected in his taco.
So, you don't want me to present, you want me to just, if there's questions or?
Yeah, I'm thinking for the sake of time, because we have so many, Chuck, maybe if we just
Okay.
see if there are questions or if there are any areas that you want Chuck to elaborate on. I mean, otherwise, it could be a long night, depending on how you guys are feeling. We do have an executive session and a lot to talk about, so.
I just had a quick question about the, I mean, this is great and very thorough, Chuck. And one of the things that stood out to me was the 2 times per year staff observation of other classrooms. And I think that's new at the middle school. Is that true, or have you
So
already been doing this?
We have been doing it.
You have been doing
It
it.
has not been new, it was on my, if you look, my school program last year had this. One
Yeah.
area is I have not achieved that goal each year.
Okay.
Each year, we end up with 1 or 2 for some, but not for all.
Gotcha.
It's actually been something I've been doing since I came to Portland. John had his work on terms of kind of what is most impactful for professional development is teachers being able to do professional development within their instructional environment and getting to have discourse around instruction with their colleagues that they can continuously reflect on is one of the most high impact practices. Getting a art teacher who teaches a lab-like environment to observe a science teacher has so much benefit to the pedagogy of what the science teacher's delivering in art and what the art teacher's delivering in the classroom, what the science teacher's delivering. Because there are similar practices that get implemented in terms of working with groups and working on project-based learning. Similar things with social studies and ELA teachers. So we always want to make sure that we're building, one of my big philosophies on professional development, it is a cost-saving philosophy, but it's also has the largest impact, research shows, on professional learning for adults, is that you want to have staff viewing the practices and the capacities of their colleagues within the real work setting, within the similar context that they're working, so they can most easily apply those same learning strategies to their practices. We do this twice a year. We plan to do this. I give teachers release time during their team meetings. So there's no PD time. It's just during team meetings. They normally have a duty or a team meeting. They don't do the team meeting that day, and they disperse around the school, schedule times to visit with other teachers. They utilize a protocol. This year we'll be talking about rigorous instructional learning tasks or rigorous collaborative tasks, as which, if you notice, in my academic goal was one of the focus areas with focusing on rigorous instruction and ensuring that those long-term learning tasks are of a rigorous design. So teachers will be able to go see their other peers and then reflect upon those at the following faculty meeting, utilizing that faculty meeting time really as professional learning time. So it's a practice that I'm really proud of. It's very aligned with what Eric has been leading us as district leaders through in the instructional rounds model, and it's just been it's a real benefit to our school, and just ensuring that we are building our strength through our current strengths, and getting our master teachers to really share their craft, and our learning teachers to really be able to build off of that and develop colleagues that they can go to and utilize for those resources of their personal development.
Thank you.
I have 2
Yeah.
questions. One is pretty quick. It's the last one on the operations.
Yep.
Around planning for 6th grade. Is the committee going to include current 6th grade staff?
It does. So the committee itself, and again, this is a planning committee. It is independent of, there's a vote happening in November regardless. This has nothing to do with, this has to do with timeline needed for developing a schedule and a budget proposal. So in the event that the vote passes, I need to be prepared as a principal to be able to plan for a new schedule, a new school, expansion of that by 33% of my by 50% of my student population, and development of new unified arts curriculum, proposals to the curriculum committee of potentially new courses. All of that takes time, so I jump-started what is that process just by starting the planning of, let's just take a look at the most technical thing that impacts the budget, which is scheduling. And what are things that we would need in the schedule? We have utilized time to look at, and we have met with, me and Mike Searson have collaborated together. We sent a survey out of any staff members, actually that the parents as well, that are interested, and students, in participating on a committee for the planning component. I'm not gonna be including parents or students until after that voting timeline, because I'm trying to not stay involved in that component at all. But with the staff members, I've already met to start with the technical planning of what would different schedule models look like. What do current middle schools look like with a similar build to ours that are 6 through 8? So we've researched middle schools in our DIRG, in our area of similar size. We most recently went through 20 different iterations of schedules and identified areas of those schedules we like, things we don't like, so that we can most effectively, when it comes time for budget season, propose options for what a schedule could be for you as a board to be able to review and take a really thorough look at it, so we're not making we're not letting the tail wag the dog.
Thanks, Jeff. And then, the last two objectives under culture and climate, both seem related to student behavior, and I'm kind of curious, like, how are you gonna know if we've arrived in achieving these objectives?
So some of the areas that we utilize, we have our school climate survey, which the lowest area of rating in our school climate survey last year was peer relationships with one another. Students really feeling that they had a poor relationship with other peers in the school. So utilizing that annual school climate survey is one area. We utilize the DESA screener 3 times a year, which identifies you'll notice in goal 2, the areas we identified are peer relationships and self-management. Those are part of the CASTLE framework, a social emotional learning framework, and those are the 2 areas rated as lowest for our middle school students. So we do utilize metrics to make sure we're identifying how our students are feeling. The DESA screen is something the state has sponsored and is funding for all schools to utilize. This year, they're actually expanding it to include a student self-report option. So we're utilizing those metrics, along with our typical behavior metrics, which include discipline referrals, attendance, DNF lists, and suspensions and expulsion rates. So we utilize the combination of that data. Ultimately, we're a small enough school that we're able to review that data and look at it on an individual student-by-student basis to really get the understanding of our kids. Perfect example, on the next plan, the operations, Eric was talking a bit about attendance. I don't want to jump on we're using that as a nice step on what we've already done at the middle school with our attendance process. We are utilizing monthly meetings to review attendance to make sure that our counselors, our nurse, our staff members that are most connected to attendance, each one of them have a target student that they are responsible for and being the expert on when those indicators get to a certain threshold. So we do the same thing with discipline. If the student is a special education student, it's likely our social worker, Meg Bailey. If the student is a general education student or a 504 student, it's likely Mr. Rose. At times it's the nurse if that's been their trusted adult that they've developed. At times it's myself or our harbor professionals. So we utilize that model and we utilize our SRBI process as we meet weekly with teams to talk about all students of concern at the 7th and the 8th grade level.
It sounds like a lot of this stuff is embedded in academics, and, you know, we're expecting classroom teachers as well as the support staff to kind of guide kids along. And we know that middle school is really a trial by fire, and relationships are important. Are there days or there parts of the schedule during the day when there is a more a greater opportunity for kids to be social? I mean, obviously lunch. You know, middle school kids don't really get a recess where they go out and they play or whatever, but, I mean, do we make, like, even a special period or day of a spirit kind of a thing?
One thing you'll notice in here on the climate area is one of the things I'm looking to increase is increasing our number of student assemblies and events, whether those be pep rallies, student events. I was able to find last year, based off of my climate committee's recommendation from one of my French teacher's child had experienced this. We brought Grit and Wit in, and I invited Brownstone to be a part of it too, because it was a great effort to build that positive attitude of I can do this and I can do this together and I don't quit on things and perseverance. And it was a great team building opportunity.
Right.
We also are bringing in Looking in Theater, which is a CREC from Hartford Academy of the Arts that comes and teaches students through skits social scenarios. We're embedding a new social media curriculum this year that Mr. Toussaint's implementing called Social Balance that we're utilizing with our partners from Skills 21 who are running our AI professional development.
Okay.
So we're doing a lot of differentiated things. In terms of time for students to be kids and interact with each other, we encourage all of our kids to participate in extracurriculars, to propose extracurriculars. We utilize our intramurals fund to be able to ensure that we can support other ideas that are off the beaten path for kids that come and propose ideas. All they have to do is come with a couple of kids that have a similar interest and a staff who's willing to sponsor, and we get those things on the schedule.
Great, okay. That's good. Because they need to be kids.
Absolutely.
Good. No other questions?
Anything else for Chuck? No?
I'm happy to see that you're expanding your security camera coverage and you're activating the magnetically locking doors. Were they not being locked before?
And I think Dr. Britton will tell you one of the biggest focal points I've had since I've gotten here has been school security. I'm pretty vigilant around having protocols for safety and security, whether it's been implementation of a Raptor system, embedding when Dr. Britton brought in our Navigate system, bringing in our anonymous reporting tool system to the district. The magnetic door is something that I've been asking about since I came here when I was shared some difficult examples of student behaviors that have happened after hours between schools that during that less supervised time, our building was most vulnerable during that after-school sports time. So working with custodians, with Bob Shea, our director of facilities, we identified that those doors that go between the middle school and high school have the components necessary to develop magnetic locks. They had just never been activated since the building's inception. So we utilized that time, we got them magnetized, and we now have that capacity after school to lock that down. So when it's winter season, where our building is most vulnerable for all the basketball events and things that go later into the evening, we're able to isolate the middle school or high school, and students aren't going to be accessing other parts of the building during those evenings. We're also consistently, and I want to say Joe Briganti and Bob Shea are amazing at this, looking at our camera coverage and figuring out how can we expand that to ensure the safety of our building. We've expanded the use of it tremendously in the past 2-3 years.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chuck.
Thank you.
Ryan has texted me, he is back online. so,
Okay,
yeah.
great. Shall we back up to Valley View then?
Yeah.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Hey, Ryan, we can hear
Hi,
you. Yep.
Ryan.
Great to see everyone. I apologize for not being here at the last meeting when the other elementary principals presented. I had to attend a family funeral in Pennsylvania. So I'll make this fairly short and sweet. Mine is very similar to Tracy's draft plan for that she wrote for Gildersleeve. In fact, we did a lot of work on them together. One, for the talent component of it, unfortunately, but yet fortunate for Valley View and really for both of our schools, we did hire for the RISE special education teacher position. And we've been working really hard to support that teacher in the ABA position at Valley View this year. From our new BCBA, Sarah McLaughlin as the director has been supporting her. Myself and our other special education teachers. So that's a very that's a big focus is to keep the person in that position feeling comfortable, feeling that she has all the training and support that she needs. The second part Eric already talked about this evening, which is under academics, it's the implementation of the Inter-Reading pilot. So I won't go back over that again. That is going well at Valley View. Of course, it's a it's a change for everyone. A lot of our teachers have been teaching the students letter sounds and letter formation and those basic skills a certain way for many years. So that's a shift, but I think a really good shift as well. And then the last part, major part of my plan, is the culture and climate piece at Valley View, and a big piece of that is onboarding all of our new staff. We have 3 first grade teachers. We talked about that several weeks ago, how there has been a lot of staff turnover. You've heard me talk a lot over the years when I was at Gildersleeve about the professional learning community process, doing that training, implementing the tenets of PLCs. Fortunately, the several members of the leadership team at Valley View and I were able to attend a PLC conference in Rochester right before school started, and so we're starting to do a lot of that work, which is related to student academics, but also related just to the culture of the school. We've developed a new mission, a new vision for the school, collective commitments that that we have together. And so that's a big piece of not only, like as I said, not only academics, but the culture and the climate. And then the last thing, I know there are a lot of questions about Valley View kind of coming together at the end. We hired 12 new staff members, and there was a lot of change. And I cannot say enough about the faculty and staff that are a part of the Valley View team. Our 3 first grade teachers are wonderful. They gel really nicely, not only with their 2 first grade colleagues who have been there for several years, but also with the kindergarten team and the preschool team. We have several new paraprofessionals. We have new specialist teachers. And again, I just, it really is the staff that rolls up their sleeves. They're getting to know each other and just doing a really nice job.
Ryan, can I ask you, it looks, am I reading this correctly, that there's a separate climate committee and a separate culture committee? And can you tell me why 2 different committees and sort of what their different purposes are? And is this a burden on you as an administrator and on our, how is this working?
It really isn't. I know, and Tracy had mentioned to me that one of you had asked that question. It's separated because there's, I really see the culture part as the professional learning community implementation, and a lot of work that had to go along with that. Whereas as climate was, more building the team of professionals with so many new people, I just felt like those things they could have been combined very easily. There's also, as we talked about earlier, there's a new climate policy that is requiring us to develop a climate plan, just like all the other schools. So to me, there was a distinct need, again, for building the staff, bringing together a committee that, and we meet once per month, to do that work, separate from the climate work that needed to be done in the school.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah, thank you.
I have one question on the last operations objective. It seems like you probably would have already developed the master schedule and rolled it out, and I'm curious how that went and what the feedback has been from the staff.
Yeah, I think it's been very positive. It is largely modeled after the Gildersleeve schedule. It's and the big change is that it's a block schedule where all of the kindergarten teachers and all of the first grade teachers have specials together every day, which allows them to meet and plan and work together collaboratively during that time. In the past, there was part of each team that had specials together, but they didn't have that collaborative planning time every single day. We're very fortunate. We have Karen Radzwitz from Gildersleeve had some time in her schedule, so she comes over to do a STEAM class of science, technology, engineering, art, and music. So that's an additional class additional special for our kindergartners this year. Cheryl McDonough comes over from Brownstone, along with Matt Cox each morning. Matt does our first grade gym classes, and Cheryl does our first grade social emotional learning special. So it was great to collaborate with Mike and Tracy, to be able to do that. And it was really twofold. One was to give all of our students an SEL, social emotional learning special every week. And then the second piece of it was to make sure that all of our teachers had collaborative planning time. you know, and then, I mean, I would, not be completely transparent if I didn't say that, you know, as I worked on the schedule, the potential schedule moving forward, for the consolidated school, this is largely what it would look like.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Ryan?
No, I think it's good.
No? I am a little curious, just because you didn't mention it, about the play-based learning. This is, you know, new legislation, and I'm curious about how the implementation is going with the new learning, how that's being brought into classrooms in kindergarten and first grade right now.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, I have to say it's a little bit in the shadows, you know, in terms of what we've been, you know, talking about. They're doing it, but kind of in the shadows with interreading being at the center of the stage right now. However, you know, for a lot of our kindergarten teachers, they feel like they're going back to doing more of what they used to do several years ago that they thought was really important. Now we're putting more structure to those units, and there's, you know, it's a little bit, there's more of a focus, you know, than there used to be. But there is a block in our schedule. There's 30 minutes toward the end of the day for both kindergarten and first grade. They did some curriculum writing around what those units are going to look like. They kind of just scratched the surface on that this summer, but embedding both math standards and English language arts standards into that work. And that's actually what our board spotlight will be on in December. You know, likely I won't be bringing kindergartners and first graders out at 7 o'clock at night to talk with you, but I'm hoping we can get some videos and share with you what we're doing there. Kindergarten is deep in their farm unit, they're headed toward that direction right now, and it's a great part of the day. It's one of my favorite parts of the day.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Anybody have anything else for Ryan? Nope. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Go to Kate.
Yep, sounds good.
So, Dylan, do we have Kate online? Can we do that?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, Kate.
First of all, thank you for letting me report remotely. I'm a little bit under the weather and not camera ready, so.
We can hear it in your voice. I'm sorry you're not feeling well.
Okay, that's okay. My administrative team has been very, very supportive of me this week because I'm going to be the mother of the groom on Saturday.
Oh.
And so I absolutely need to get better.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd like to share with you the context for the high school's continuous improvement plan. As you know, we have our NEAS visit coming on October 28th and 29th. At the conclusion of that visit, I will get draft priority areas for growth as deemed by the commission. We already have a fairly good sense of what those are going to be, and I've incorporated them into this plan, but we won't have a final report until several weeks after the visit. So this plan is at best a solid first draft. I may be looking to tweak it mid-year. For those of you who aren't familiar with the NEAS process, the committee comes in the fall of 2024, identifies our priority areas for growth and sets our goals, and comes back in the fall of 2026 to see if we met them. So our school improvement plan will really look like that 2-year arch between the two visits. I'm happy to take any questions on the plan.
Any questions for Kate?
No play-based.
No play-based learning at the high school?
Sometimes it feels like play-based. One point I will highlight is our district average of chronic absenteeism at 14%. The high school's numbers are what's contributing to the high end of that average. So we are actually, in addition to leveraging all of the positive, proactive, asset-based tools that the district has outlined, we are also doing things like tying parking privilege and senior privilege to good school attendance.
Okay.
And looking at it, you know, these are kids who, for the most part, are in control of getting themselves to school if they need to. So we're working with kids and working with, you know, with freedom and responsibility, they go hand in hand.
Gotcha.
Are you using the review committees as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you for highlighting that for us.
Do you have the dates for NEASC's visit?
October 28th and 29th.
Thanks.
How are you feeling about that, Kate? Are you feeling mostly prepared and ready?
I really am. Our steering committee, led by Rob Jones and Mike Kenny, has been working now for almost a year to complete the self-reflection process. We're meeting weekly since school started because now we're down to doing nuts and bolts, like making sure the work room is set up for the committee and those kind of things. We have a very solid self-reflection that all the faculty had a hand in, and I think we're poised to get some really good feedback.
That's great. Well, if there are no other questions for Kate, it sounds like you're on a really good track, and we'll look forward to hearing the updates that come out of that visit and revisiting this at some point afterwards.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
feel better.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not sneezing when I'm sitting in the
That's right.
church.
Kate, well, I just didn't mean to jump. Caitlin's got a question. Yeah.
Through the National Honor Society, some of the students are going to be kind of helping out the NEAS people like chores and whatnot, and we're going to do them.
That's great.
We're going to do them through NHS.
Wonderful. Yeah, awesome. Will you be part of that? Nice.
Signed up for it.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. All right. Thank you so much, Kate.
Two more.
Have a good night.
You too. Feel better.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Yep, sounds good.
Sarah, you ready?
So the vote for just questions or brief overview then questions?
If you want to give us a brief overview or highlight anything in particular, that's fine. Yeah.
Sure. So I'll just go through each section, the T, the A, the C, the O, pause, we can do questions in that area, and then, we'll keep it moving. So in talent, this is the most challenging one for special services. We know there is a shortage across Connecticut and across our nation of special educators, related service providers, paraprofessionals. So this one's pretty meaty for me. The two areas I have for objectives, one is around just developing the staff that we have. I think the strongest thing we can do in Portland is make sure that our staff are supported, they're valued, they're seen, because one, that keeps the staff that we have in Portland who are fantastic, and two, we've had a lot of folks who hear from friends who are teaching other districts, hey, come to Portland, it's a great place to work, so that's really my talent goal supports that. The other one is around director visibility and accessibility, so that folks are, have access to me frequently, weekly as a support, that I'm visible in buildings to our students and our staff. Also on objective one, there was some new legislation, as Charles mentioned, around paraprofessional development. So there is an objective around increasing meaningful professional development for them on our delay days and on our student release days. Any questions on the T?
I don't think so.
No? All
Sounds
right.
good.
A. So this, is in line with the other plans that you've heard. In special education, really want to make sure that we're using evidence-based instruction specific to students with disabilities, because, like Interreading is our pilot, targeted as a tier 1 intervention. We want to make sure on a tier 3 and beyond basis that we're really using evidence-based instruction. So that's both on things like touch math, Wilson reading, also things that are used in our ABA-based programs, such as discrete trial training and net training that our district BCBA, who's new this year, will be implementing. Any thoughts on the A? No? All right. On culture and climate, two here. One is around building-based SRBI behavior teams. I believe you've heard in the past behavior leadership teams mentioned. The idea that is that just as with academics, we help students on a tiered basis before referring to the special education process. It's the idea that behavior is a skill that has to be learned. and we convene a behavior leadership team prior to considering referral to special education. So one of my objectives is around supporting that work that we have going on in every building, led by our principals, which has been fantastic to create SRBI-based plans for students. The second one is around, aligning to the school climate initiatives that all of the buildings have in place, because student services, again, we're our own team, but we also support all of our buildings. Any questions or thoughts on C? No? And around the O, I took Sarah's suggestion around the van. So we have one that is, the kind of centralization auditing measures that I mentioned, I believe, in August and September. Our paraprofessional matrix, continuing IEP audits, just to make sure that we have some coherence in systems in the district. Again, even though all our buildings are different, special services is kind of an umbrella team. That's objective 1. And then objective 2 is around that van. Thank you, Sarah, for the suggestion. Just monitoring, how that is going in terms of, communication, arrival and dismissal times, and then the fiscal impact of monitoring the savings associated with that, any additional costs incurred. I will say, I think one, impact is that our minibus that is taking some of our special ed students, it was typically a bus that was the last to run because there were a lot of students. They were spread across town. Those students with behavioral needs, since some of those students are now being served on our in-district van, we're no longer receiving, calls and issues around the van being incredibly late. So in addition to the financial savings, I think there are other non-fiscal things that are positive, such as, minibuses not arriving at 4:30, 4:45, things like that were a challenge. So those are the 2 things I have for O.
Not one call this year? Charles just said not one call this year about that.
Literally.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Making life better for families.
Yeah, so any questions or comments on any of the elements of the special services plan?
I have an overall question. I think I've heard you talking about how to collaborate with educators outside of student services to equip them, and I'm just wondering, does that show up anywhere in this plan?
Yeah, I would say that'd probably go under the T section. So really increasing across building collaboration. That might include folks that are not in the special education realm. So, for example, our first PD day, buildings were all, people were going to different buildings. They were zigging and zagging. Paras were meeting with paras. Teachers were meeting with SLPs. All our 504 coordinators got together. And some really good things came out of that. All the team leaders of those groups reached out to me and said, we talked about this. These are concerns we have. These are professional development areas we want to explore. These are things we need from you. So, for example, some of our Brownstone paraprofessionals shared that they really want support in PD around the new math. They're supporting students in math classes and, they're used to algorithmic math and it's different now and they wanted that professional development. So that was one thing that came out of it. Another that came out, for example, was paraprofessionals at the elementary level saying, I really need more support with student behavior. It's something I'm not confident in. I'm doing a lot of it. So we have Mari Wrightington, our consultant, who's worked with us the past 5 years, coming for 2 delay days to do elementary specific behavior PD. So I think that's an example of that collaboration leading to, professional development that's meaningful for folks and it's what they want, which is, as Eric has shared in the past, it's really the thrust of the whole plan is it's self-directed. It's things that folks are interested in. So I would say, Sarah, to your question, that T, that first objective kind of involves that collaboration.
Yeah.
Any other questions or concerns?
This looks great, Sarah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
All right, and that means, Eric, you are up.
Right, I could theoretically be the quickest because you basically heard my,
We did.
my update. But
We
there's
did.
a couple things in the plan that I didn't speak to. I'm happy to hit on any of those things, answer questions. Preference?
I think we've talked about this before with your diversity goal.
Yep.
How are you defining diversity and then you kind of terms of how the state defines it?
So we've talked about, and this was an objective for last year, an action step rather we didn't get to. And we mentioned this at Equity Coalition the other night. Diversity isn't just visible indicators of diversity. And I think if you asked people at face value, is Portland a diverse place? People would shake their head and say no, some might laugh, but that's not true. The reality is 33% of our students and families identify as being of color. And there's a lot of other ways that we have diversity that we haven't tapped into. There's things like how many languages are spoken in Portland? How many different countries were residents of, were members of our school community born in? What's our religious or spiritual representation here amongst our families? So we need to find ways, and this is in our action step, of mining that data and using it to tell a narrative of Portland as a diverse place. And I think when you do that, it becomes enticing to diverse candidates to work here who, you know, when, I guess, in the absence of that type of narrative, they're going to rely on surface level indicators of diversity that are limited. And that, listen, we're always going to struggle to attract candidates of color into a district where, at least for now or for the short term, they may be one of very few candidates or one of very few employees of color in the district. But if we can recognize and tell of our diversity in other ways, I think it becomes a good, I don't want to use the term marketing point, but it makes us look more attractive to more diverse people, and I think there's good work to be done there.
I think that's an excellent point.
Mm-hmm.
That diversity is not just of color, but of a lot of things. And when we parse that and we know about it, it enriches us because now we know.
Yeah. And when we look at something like our Equity and Inclusion Coalition, you know, we start every year with what's your why for being here, and it tells a lot about people's understandings of diversity and what inclusion means and people's motivations for coming to something like our coalition beyond just race or gender or visual markers of identity.
Excellent.
Eric, there was a...
Sorry, just not to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
That is not to say that we are not intent on hiring more educators of color over time and doing all we can to get more educators of color into our pipeline.
Yep.
Because the reality exists that our students of color deserve to learn and be represented by educators of color in our district, much more so than they are now. So I don't want to say that that's not our intent. We want to kind of serve both camps, if you will.
Yeah. I was just jumping a little bit. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to jump to one of your talent goals had to do with strengthening new employee onboarding, and you'd referenced in your report that you were making efforts to reach out to them and touch base with new hires and make sure everything was going smoothly. And I was going through the CABE newsletter, and it was shortly after I'd read your report, and there was a little blurb in the CABE newsletter talking about the idea of stay interviews. You know, all districts now are conducting exit interviews, but they were talking about the benefits. I think it was written by CES, maybe. They'd implemented the idea of stay interviews as a way to touch base with staff and make sure that folks are, you know, that they're having great days, that they're feeling valued here, that they're not thinking about leaving for particular reasons, that we're touching base about what they might need in order to do their job better or be happier in their job. And it was just it was good timing for me reading that. It made me think of your report and touching base with new hires, and it seems like maybe that might be a practice worth learning a little bit more about beyond our new hires.
I love that idea. I wrote it down. I think not having a human resources department proper because we're a smaller district it's not an excuse for not having good human resources practices. And I think there's ways we can get better. I think we've gotten better in the ways that we conduct exit interviews and the information we collect from people as they're unfortunately heading out of district.
Yeah.
But it's a great point. What's making people want to stay, or what can we do better on an ongoing basis to keep talented people here? When I look at our new hire protocols, you know, I only have to look as far as Dylan, Morgan Smith, Tracy Graff, Alicia Miller. These are people that for a long time have facilitated what's a really excellent new hire orientation program in our district.
Yeah.
But the reality is that occurs during like the honeymoon phase. You just got a new job. It's really exciting. Right. Welcome to Portland. Here's free lunch. Here's a t-shirt. You know, The inevitable reality is the school year gets really, really hard.
Yeah.
They have amazing colleagues, but how do we formalize opportunities for teachers to be getting support, to be, you know, keep building connections as the school year goes on, because the work gets hard. You know, the climb gets steep, and I think we want to make sure that we're hearing from new hires, especially over their first couple years of being here. Are we doing enough? How are the things we are doing going, and what more can we do?
Yeah, I'll remember to forward that blurb to you. It just,
I would
it
appreciate that.
resonated with what I was already reading in your report as like an extension of what you're doing, and it made sense to me.
Thank you.
I think the new teacher evaluation also has an opportunity to ask teachers in general, what do you need from us to do a better job? Because being in a classroom for 4 or 5 or 10 years, it gets stagnant, or you just take it as, well, this is the way it is, and I'm not moving because I live in town or whatever. I've got tenure, I'm not going anywhere. I think we also have the opportunity to ask our veteran teachers, what are we doing that could help you to just feel refreshed?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge this is a lot. It's all important.
This is a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. You know, I don't know if this is the right mentality. I mean, I don't feel the pressure from this board to accomplish 100% of the plan, you know? So I look at it as like, my mentality is like going on a camping trip. You know, I'd rather have in my improvement plan more than enough camping supplies versus being on the trip and realizing that we forgot something or scrambling to find something we ought to have. So, you know, these are aspirations, they're action steps. If we don't hit them, you know, I didn't hit many things in the plan last year. I was honest with the board and with Charles in the reflection. They don't go away, they find their way into the next year's plan, and we act with intent that way. So it is a robust plan, but, you know, I push back on SMART goals or time-stamped things because it's not about when the work gets done. It's about staying committed to the work and seeing it through and getting it done as you're able to get it done. And so I think what's in this plan, it's a lot, but we've put it to paper, which is a form of putting it to commitment, and we'll keep moving in the areas of these commitments as long as it takes to see them through.
Yeah. Good analogy. I have no further questions.
Any other questions, folks? Nope. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks.
This is a lot. That's my question, yeah. So to the board, are we ready to take action on the approving the taco framework that we've discussed tonight as well as at our last meeting?
Yeah, and it's really to take the taco plans and make them your goals.
Yeah.
Right, to adopt the taco plans as the 2024-2025 Board of Ed goals. And I think you got it. Did we get the motion language? Yeah.
Yes, there is some motion language. Do you have it, Meg?
Do I have it? Probably somewhere. You sent it to me this afternoon.
Should we be bringing the Portland high school plan forward, knowing that in a very short while it's gonna need revision? Or maybe it sounded like it was
That's a
pretty
question.
certain that.
Yeah, I think we're okay. I think we'll be okay. You mean in terms of the feedback from the NIASC committee?
Right, yeah. There's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can always make amendments later.
Yeah, I would think
I
that,
have
you know,
no
these goals serve us well in this moment for where we are. And, you know, acknowledging that we may need to modify them after we get more information is, I mean, I think,
Right, because
Fair,
we'll do a
right?
mid-year check-in on them, and we can change. I just don't want to, I don't know how long it'll be before NIAS turns around that feedback, and
She said it'll be a while,
Yeah,
weeks,
so.
you know, it won't come back to us right away. So I will make a recommendation to the Portland Board of Education that the taco plans for Valley View, Gildersleeve, Brownstone, Portland Middle School, Portland High School, Student Services, and the Curriculum Instruction and Technology be adopted as the Portland Board of Education 2024-25 goals.
It's like,
seconded by Angela. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. I believe the motion passes unanimously. With gratitude to all of you for the tremendous amount of work that went into these documents. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Whew. So we're going to move on to a couple of policies, and these are first readings, so we are not looking to take action on either of these tonight, but we have two policies for consideration. And the first one is policy 0521. Did you want to update us on this?
That one's
It's just clerical.
an easy one. It had people's names in it, Philip and Dawn's names in it. So, you know, as opposed to having to update them every time, you know, these positions turn over, I just
Right. And
struck
that's-
out
yep,
the
that's all
names
we
and left the
wanted to do.
names of the
Yep.
positions there. So that makes more sense.
And the reason this came to our attention was that this pertains to the Title IX, the new Title IX update as well, and so there's an adjusted legal reference to reflect that as well.
Yeah.
Right. Yep, so it's just the language cleanup.
Any questions about that? No, then we'll move on. We're not gonna ask for a vote on this tonight. Even though it's an easy one, we'll wait and we'll follow our process and address this at our next meeting. So the next policy is a little meatier, and this is the update to the Title IX, to our Title IX policy that comes through us. This is a mandate, so.
Right, so we have, of course, an existing Title IX policy, and in many cases, what we would do is go through that policy and provide red line language changes, but there are some large number of changes that CABE recommended a full replacement of the Title IX policy with this new policy. And, again, it would take, you kind of have to read through it, yeah, and then I think it's helpful that if you look at that slide deck I provided you, what Shipman and Goodwin gives you in that slide deck are some of the bullet points which constitute the changes.
70-something slides.
Yeah, it's in there. It's like, I might be slide 50 or so. I'd have to go back and take a look at it. But, some of the more significant changes are, and fortunately, Sarah is now our new Title IX coordinator. She's replaced Dawn. She just finished her training with Shipman and Goodwin, about 3 weeks ago, Sarah? August 6th. So she went through the whole training that was updated with this. And there are some changes that came out of something called the final rule, which I think is kind of misnamed because it changes sort of regularly. But the most recent final rule is reflected in these changes, and they have to do with a standard that we use to determine if harassment or discrimination has existed, and then some of the mechanisms that, as our Title IX coordinator, Sarah would be using and the building principals might be using to conduct the investigations and determine whether it's mean behavior or bullying or rises to that level of harassment and sexual harassment.
And just discrimination.
Right,
And
and
this
then-
covers three groups, the certified, non-certified, and students, so that's why you've got 3 different policy numbers on there. And then the regulation is also applicable to those 3 groups as well.
Right, and then it also updates some of the definitions
It does.
and categories that are subject to protection under Title IX.
And Charles and Sarah have gone through the regulation, the accompanying regulation, to make sure that it's reflecting what our actual process and practices are in the district, as well as being in compliance with the changes to the policy. I will just note that I did notice as I was skimming through this that I think a few things snuck into the regulation that were like meant to be considerations. Like they're asking questions of the district, like consider whether to have more than one Title IX coordinator. I think we've made that decision, so we probably just need to I would just do like a second, just through the regulation. The
Yep.
policy is clean,
Yep.
but the regulation is
Get into that.
extensive and really very prescriptive, so there might be a few spots there to take a
Because
peek
it's very
at.
legal, and
Yeah.
it can result, if we don't handle it correctly, could go to other government agencies and lawsuits and everything else. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure we get it right, and Sarah has been trained, and we will always go to the attorney when there are questions as to how to handle it if we need to do that. So the policy committee was assured that we were in the right place now, and now it's up to all of you to read it and ask questions before the next reading. Another light night of reading.
It is a lot. Are there questions about the Title IX
I don't know if
policy?
Sarah can speak to this. Let me ask questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, do you want to join us?
I think it's an important
It is.
issue to discuss, especially since as of August 1st, there are 25 states right now that have legal injunctions against implementing this final rule, as Charles said. So there's a lot there, but the question I would have, not that much. You've been trained on this now, and I just, how does this policy ensure the protection of the rights of an accused, or as they call it in here, the respondent to an accusation that's made? How do we, what are the elements in place that assure that their rights are protected?
So there is a really kind of distinct process you have to go through if a complaint is made. So a complaint could be something that comes from someone requesting it. So like there's a complaint form that Shipman, provided with us, a model form to use for Portland. Something could also come internally from us. So building principal, for example, is made aware of 2 students, incident in a bathroom, for example, that could involve Title IX. There's then a process to follow as far as investigation. One element of the policy that, we did have kind of a choice on was to go with either a single investigator model or not a single investigator model. We did go with the single investigator, but that doesn't mean that in a certain case we would have, someone as the investigator, someone as the decision maker, someone as, fact finder. There's different roles and it could be more than one person. We just specified in our policy that it could be one. So I would assume, for example, if we had a case that was, particularly thorny or involved, a conflict of interest, that we would of course engage our board counsel, but then also we might move from a single investigator model to having different members serving different roles. I think that would, if we had a case like that, that were particularly tricky, we would want to engage more than one person. So for example, I as a coordinator could be a single investigator, single decision maker. If it were a complex case, we'd probably want to involve other folks in the process versus a single investigator model.
And is that identified in the policy? Does it say that?
Yes, yes it does.
Yeah.
I've read this, so I know.
Yep. Yeah, it's quite long.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
it's a meaty
It's
one.
lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and they did, Shipman and Goodwin, one point they did make is that there's constantly cases arising around Title IX. So like Charles said, they call it final rule, but there's, a great likelihood that this is going to change frequently as, as case law is happening in front of us. So it's a final rule for now, but they did stress that, this is what they're recommending as of now, but there's likely changes happening at the federal level.
And we do protect the person who is being discriminated against, and there can't be any retribution.
Right.
If it's a student or somebody who's working, they are protected from either being relieved of their job or not being able to get educational services, even if it means, tutoring or whatever.
Right.
But we do protect the innocent until,
Yes.
But we don't know who the innocent are until.
Well, no, and we can't.
So really, I think the policy is clear that you
Right.
don't make
Well,
a determination off
right.
the mark about who is
Absolutely.
right and who is
Well, because the
wrong, who
board
did
can
that,
be the
who did
hearing, we could
So-
potentially be a hearing.
That was a question
board.
I had, is like, when or if, when is the board made aware of these grievances? Or is it in the case of other grievances, we are not, because we may be participating in due process?
Charles
Yeah,
can answer that.
you would be made aware if it came to an expulsion hearing, for sure, or if there were a contract termination,
Right.
that the person, there are different levels, depending on tenure status, depending on, whether it's comes in the form of a grievance of an adverse employment decision that the administration is recommending. So the 2 formal vehicles for the board would be for students through the expulsion process or through a termination procedure that either comes as a recommendation from me or through the grievance process.
So read it and ask lots of questions.
Were there
I
any
have
other?
notes, but I left them home.
Well, it's a first read. You'll have
It is a
another
first
bite.
read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If other bites we have.
Yeah.
Is
Are
there
there
anything you wanted me to look into? Any other questions on your mind before the second read? Title IX wise?
Or you can email questions.
Yeah,
too,
or you
if
can
they
always
come up,
email
yeah.
me and I can look into them with our board counsel or just research
Send it
further.
to Laura.
The point that Shipman again just made repeatedly is this will continue to change. But happy to look into anything if you have specific
We'll
questions.
send them to Laurel and she can forward them on.
I put again, one other question I had, and I said I had notes, and I had looked at some of this, but when there is an allegation made, or a grievance, and the students are interviewed, are students that might be exposed to risk of expulsion or other disciplinary measures, do they offer the opportunity to have a parent or guardian with them?
They have,
Or is that not,
they have,
or at what point does that happen?
immediately.
I think that's a complicated question.
It is.
De-
It's a
depending on the
complicated
situation.
question.
Oh, it is, yeah.
It's situational,
Yeah.
not always.
The policy doesn't really.
No,
it doesn't really get
and the
into
reality is,
that.
our administrators serve in local parentis, right? So when we're investigating complaints, we're not always gonna involve the parents at the front end. We have to investigate. Certainly, I guarantee you, if it were headed to the level of, yeah, this is a harassment, sexual harassment, if it reached that level that might involve disciplinary action, especially up to and including expulsion, without a doubt, the parents are going to be notified and involved in those conversations very quickly. At the very base level, the complaint comes in at first, Chuck's looking into it, he may not be calling the parents first, he's talking to students, gathering as much information as he can, but if in his initial investigations of that, he's going, ooh, I need Sarah, I need Charles, I need Rebecca, this is not beyond a mean behavior or, moving up that ladder of severity, then definitely the parents would be notified and engaged.
But again, I don't think the policy outlines that clearly.
They're right here, but it's in the regulation, and it says very clearly, this is gonna be on, the rights of parents and guardians to act on behalf of their children. And I would think that they are they have the right to act on behalf, to be participant and attend meetings.
Only if someone reaches out.
And when a child is interviewed as a witness, a complainant, a respondent, the staff member conducting the interview shall ensure that the student has the opportunity to provide direct help. Parents can be there. I mean, we have a policy, I think if there's a police matter, that we have to call the parent, the parent has to be present.
Well, the police won't interview a student without parents
Without a
being.
parent.
That's
So
their
that's part of our,
yeah, too.
yeah.
But you just said that that's not the case.
Well,
No,
I
we
said,
said-
The administrator is a local parentis and they
yeah,
assume that role.
so I guess what's interesting to me is every day our administrators, maybe every day, every week.
Many days.
Yeah, many days. Our administrators are receiving complaints of behaviors, right? And the administrators have to take the time to and they do investigate those behaviors, and they're making some initial determinations. It's a mean behavior or something inappropriate, and then okay, it's inappropriate. We move up. Is it mean behavior? Is it bullying? Is it harassment? Is it sexual harassment? Though all of those things may not involve the parents in those very initial preliminary data gathering, fact finding things that Chuck and administrators do regularly. As soon as the administrators are making some determinations about what that behavior is, whether it's quid pro quo or hostile environment, all of these definitions. If the red flags are going up in the administrator's mind that, hey, this is rising to the level of harassment, sexual harassment, the call is going to Sarah as the Title IX coordinator. And then certainly Sarah's reviewing the information, and at that point parents are being called, likely because students are disciplinary action is being taken, and then they're being engaged in that process. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Partially.
I think what Tim is getting at is that you're saying that, but he doesn't feel that the document is expressing that, right?
Well, I think, and Matt pointed out there is information in there about, parents can be, and I think really it can be. It doesn't say they shall be. And I think that's my concern. And it's a lot of, and I don't want to drag this out, but I just wanted to bring that up, and I'll probably talk more about it.
Sarah, at your training, did Shipman and Gouin talk at all about whether the children are minors, what obligations the parents have to be informed and involved?
They did not, and I can look into that further.
Yeah, let's find out.
Yeah, there was.
It's about due process.
Yeah.
Right, there was mention of it around law enforcement, so for example, if an SRO or police were involved, obviously that would change the equation. They didn't reference if those parties weren't involved, but I can look into it.
I do just want to highlight that I think what I'm hearing from Charles is that, when we end up with if you end up with a Title IX situation, you don't necessarily know from the get-go that it's a Title IX situation. There's a process by which you determine, oh, hey, that's where we're heading. Right. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that pretty routinely, administrators are using their best judgment to determine, is this something that needs to be escalated? And I hear that you're asking, like, at what point are parents involved?
Right.
And it sounds like there's a lot of
Uncertainty.
there's a lot of like judgment that has to be made about
Right.
which way. So I mean,
Is there any way that we can make it more concrete? Because it sounds kind of squishy.
but I think the nature of it might be kind of squishy.
It is, and
Well,
this,
So that's something to think about.
I would go ahead, and this is way beyond what we do here, but to me, the problem is that this Title IX was never intended to do what the present rule changes are trying to make it do. So it's really a square peg in a round hole. And I think that's why it leads us to this problem where, are the students due process right? And I understand they're in school and they get interviewed, whatever, but the penalties involved with this surpass other little squabbles that happen. And if you're creating a scheme here and a framework where it exposes students to tremendous risk. And I can think of other situations where if you are doing an investigation, and I've been a trained investigator, I did investigation for years on abuse and neglect. You're taught, if in an interview it raises to a point where you believe like a law has been broken, or now this person, if they continue to talk, is going to be exposed to legal jeopardy, that you need to take you need to tack on that and approach it differently, especially with a minor child under your care. If an investigator can easily lead somebody down a path to say things that they really probably shouldn't say.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's let Sarah look in. Talk to Rebecca about that. I can tell you that as part of our practice, whether it's enshrined in regulation and policy or not, if and
Regulation, it would be in regulation. The policy is,
as a high school principal, for 14 years, when I did these investigations, and sometimes I'm getting the initial report, and as I'm investigating, the initial report is rising to the level of criminal behavior, right? A theft, an assault, or something that I'm aware I might need to involve DCF, or I might need to involve law enforcement. At that point, absolutely, the parents are being called. Like, I'm letting the parents know. Now, how that is reflected in the CABE model policy or what we're considering tonight, I think we have to find that out. Let's talk to Rebecca and see what is there and how that part of it could or should, without modifying the intent of the final rule or
well, not,
the policy,
so again,
right.
we're not looking to modify, that in my mind wouldn't belong in the policy,
Right.
but what you're talking about would be something to the regulation.
Correct.
And let's be clear, this is your regulation.
Right.
It is the superintendent's regulation
Good point.
for how to implement the policy. So if you do some research, which I think is a great next step, and come to a conclusion that maybe we need different language in here, or make some tweaks that I think that, let us
that maybe
know.
reflect what we do, which
Yeah.
is.
There's a
Yes.
section of the policy that says monitor the district Title IX grievance process to ensure the following. The first one says when does it matter to go beyond the normal student bumping into one another? So you have to use your judgment, and then you go down further, there are bullet points, and it says, when a parent is required to attend, and I guess the question is, when is a parent required to attend an interview with a child, express that it is important for you to hear from the child directly. So, but the operative word is when. When should a parent be called? So that really does need to be clarified.
Right, and I would also, I think, urge everyone to look at the bullying policy, because I think for students, staff is different, but for students, often we're following that bullying investigation process, and then Title IX concerns arise. So as far as what process administrators would be following and when parents are involved, and the bullying, process does involve a certain amount of time to involve parents, to invite them to a meeting, together, to get paperwork out. So I would suggest reviewing that, because a lot of times
That's a
Title
great
IX is
point.
gonna come through that bullying investigation process.
Those timeframes are very strict.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. And kids will say, oh, I'm being bullied, and it's not bullying by the definition of the long-term sustained singular activity that goes on directed at one person. And it's harassment, it's not good, it's still a nasty business, but again, it doesn't, So you guys are gonna play King Solomon all the time, I mean, really, but we have to have it, it's a law, so.
And Laura, what you just said rang a bell with me at our policy committee when we talked about the regulation. And I think you were maybe you did this, and that's why you said that. Does the board need to actually approve regulation?
I
Are
don't
they
believe
not?
so. Yeah, I reached out to Jody Goller, and from CABE, and he hasn't responded to me yet.
I did too,
I need to
so go
follow
ahead.
up. But I did look at their guidance on the website from CABE, guidelines about who sets policy versus regulation. And they do say that in most cases, boards usually approve policy. And actually, I looked at our own policy. Our policy on policies and how policies are set reiterates that, the board passes policies, and then it references the superintendent's regulations are how the superintendent it's the guidelines for how the superintendent implements the board's policies. So those documents in combination have me feeling very confident that, you know, our job is to pass the policy. We want to be clear on how Charles envisions the regulation and how he envisions it being implemented in the district. And that's a good conversation for us to have, and we should definitely revisit this part about
interviews and-
parent and family involvement.
So yeah,
But,
just so I
yeah.
understand clearly, so you're saying this board has no role in approving policies to be, I'm sorry, regulations to be carried out by the superintendent?
My current understanding is that our duty is to approve the policy. I wanna hear that from Jody's mouth, but that's from, I did revisit our policy.
Our duty is
Yeah.
to approve the policy,
Yeah.
but not to the exclusion of regulations, right? Charles, you've done this work for a long time.
Yeah, I know, I would be interested in talking to Rebecca,
call
getting a
Jody, too.
ruling
Yeah,
on that.
he'll
My,
call
my,
us.
my experience has always been, you approve the policy and the
And
regulation.
the
That's what
regulation.
we've always
And we've
done.
always done that. We've
know,
never done it
Because they do
differently.
go hand in hand.
They do.
They do.
Yeah, that's how you
yeah.
implement a regulation, a policy is through a regulatory scheme.
I mean, this would be
Yeah.
one of the first
Should
times
be
we
envisioned
differentiate.
by-
This
Well-
would be a first time that we differentiated.
Although I would say if we go back and look at the language from past votes, I think we passed, you know, policy 514, 5.44. And if it has an accompanying regulation, it accompanies it. But I did call Jody right after our last policy meeting. He might have been out of office
I
or
called him
something.
as well, and he hasn't responded. He might
He's
be
the
out.
policy professional, the policy director at CABE. And so I was hoping to
I would
ask
be
him.
interested if our attorney would be-
That,
I mean,
we can absolutely ask
I mean, our
Rebecca
attorney
as well.
would be a better guide, I would think.
Yeah, I
Well,
see
this-
Sarah
No, I
taking
mean, I'm
notes,
sure
that's fine.
open to hear what Kate thinks, but
Yeah,
that's.
yeah.
So it sounds like two to-dos for me are to ask our board council about when parents would be involved in the Title IX investigation process.
You can do that
did.
too, but I think.
Yep.
I'll reach out to
the point here
Rebecca.
is,
Okay.
Yeah.
Does this
Yeah.
board, is it necessary?
And that's exactly what Jody recommended when they said rip and replace, was
Yes.
run it through your attorney. But he supplied the regulation as well.
Is the board indifferent to that?
Right.
And
Well, I don't think indifferent would be the word,
No.
but I
Well,
do,
if we
yeah.
don't review them and approve them, then that, to me, displays, and I don't want to quibble on the words.
Yeah.
Indifferent, I think.
Well, I'll get clarity.
Yeah,
And
I appreciate that.
yeah, I can reach out to Rebecca about that. That's not a
But
problem.
when you said that superintendent regulation, I thought you.
That language is directly from our policy.
Well, yeah.
Our own, I mean, our bylaw, I mean, our policy on policies.
Regulations we put in
Yep.
place, and our expectation is our superintendent will implement them.
Yep.
That's to that extent, so I agree.
I will,
The regulations could differ based on the school as well, right?
Well, they
so,
do get qualified by age, you know, appropriateness or by.
We want to make sure that we're reviewing the regulations at the school level? Is that a
so
different
that's
statement?
different. The regulations we're talking about are documents that accompany our policies sometimes. Not every policy has a regulation. And actually, our policy makes the point of saying that not every regulation necessarily has a policy. There are superintendent
Practices.
regulations that belong in our policy book that we house online. The function of the regulation is to guide the superintendent in implementing the board's policies. Handbooks or other, you know, guidance documents that exist at school levels would be sort of a different category.
Because I think, and I would be very interested to hear what legal
Yeah.
advice is on this, because sometimes the policy is very simple, but sometimes when you get into the regulations, that's where you make choices, right? And oftentimes, CABE gives you can choose this language or you can choose that language. See, that's why I think, yeah, the board should weigh in on which language. Otherwise, if it's superintendent's discretion, I'll choose the language. But that would seem interesting to me if it is my discretion entirely which of those two you want this or you want that in the regulations, because that's where I've largely seen like those.
Sometimes it's just semantics too.
Yeah,
you know,
sometimes, right.
because what Jody will do is he'll look at the best possible things that have come out of other places or legal language. And so he'll incorporate it and say, you have an alternate policy, you can read it this way or you can read it that way. when we used to meet in person, we would actually look at that, and you know, Tim, we would actually read paragraph by paragraph sometimes. Back in the
That's
day.
right.
And, you know, and that was how the process, but, since COVID, we meet, by, you know, Google Meet, and the policies are not that complicated. Most of them are cleanup. This is complicated because this is beyond, this is federal law. This is about court cases and everything else, so.
Well, it's actually federal regulation.
It is federal regulation, it is.
It's not, yeah, they didn't pass a statute. It's merely a
Right.
reinterpretation of a statute passed in 1972.
Exactly. And it's been morphed into, yeah, anyway.
All right.
To be continued.
Comments on that,
Yeah.
I think,
I think we-
It's a great question. It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's, I'm looking forward to the answer to that one,
Yeah.
or the guidance.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Rebecca, and in the meantime, we'll gather more information about whether there's a part of the regulation that needs to be cleaned up. And we'll have this on our second October
15th,
meeting,
yeah.
on the 15th, that's right, for a second reading.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions? Because if not, I was going to try and keep us moving. We have a lot to get through still.
No kidding.
Yeah?
It's
All right.
9:30.
It's what?
Almost 9:30.
It's almost 9:30. Okay, here we go. Let's keep it moving.
Move that to next
It's
time.
going to be a long one. All right, item,
Home.
what?
Can they go home, the administrators over there?
Yeah, absolutely, if they, yeah.
All right, anyway.
All right, we're going to move on. The next item is the Cape Board Recognition Award. This should look pretty familiar from last year, and I just wanted to say that, like, in going through and collecting these documents, it was sort of nice to use this as a checklist to judge, you know, how our leadership practices are going, and it was gratifying to be able to check off a whole lot of these things that are practices that our board continues to do, and just, you know, in reflecting on this, that it's
It's a confirmation of good board practices, and we are a good board,
Yeah.
I think.
Yep.
It's almost like reinforces our self-evaluation.
Yeah, it did sort of feel like it was reinforcing our self-evaluation, and so I was happy to do it, and yeah, so you know, ready to move forward with the motion.
So moved. I'll make a motion to accept the K Board recognition application as presented tonight.
Is there a second? Seconded by Kim. Is there further discussion?
I'm just, what are we approving? Because, I mean, this page is blank here, is this not a necessary part of it?
The final page is an optional question, which I opted not to complete. We're voting on
I
the.
mean, this is the material that's in support of the checkbox.
Exactly,
I
yep.
understand that, but.
Yep.
So the blank page, we're not.
It's, that's just part of the application. That was page 3, and then page 4 is on the back where it asks us for a motion to approve the application. And the rest of it is supporting documentation. Yeah. Yep. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, we're going to keep moving. The next item is the ratification of our Portland Association of School Administrators Bargaining Unit Agreement, which will be discussed in executive session. So we're going to move on to old business. This is a second reading of policy 5131.914, our school climate policy.
Make a motion to approve the school climate policy 5131.914 as presented.
Is there a second?
For the policy, yeah.
For the policy, thank you, Tim. Is there any discussion about 5131.914? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Committee reports. Curriculum. We set a date. We're meeting the 16th or the 17th? 16th? 16th. So we'll have a report. Actually, I think we're meeting the day after our next meeting, so we'll fill you in November. Policy.
I think we're set for the 9th.
Yes, and you all heard all the policy
heard all the
updates
policy
today.
updates, Yep.
Personnel, we have met to begin discussing our administrative assistant contract, and we're looking to set some dates
Yep.
in November, if that sounds right. Buildings and grounds,
No, nothing on the books.
correct?
10/16 is the council meeting.
Selectmen, any news, Dave?
The only thing is they read the conclusions of the Land and Building Usage Committee, and then they officially disbanded the committee.
Okay,
Oh, it's been,
all right.
go on, okay.
Youth services,
We met on 10/24. The focus is on Halloween on Main, which is the 23rd, and the Christmas tree lighting, which comes on December the 5th or 7th. And Courtney, who's the youth services director right now, will be going on maternity leave probably by the end of October for 3 months.
Equity and Inclusion Coalition, and I'm looking forward to hearing this from you too.
We met last Thursday, and as Eric talked about in his update, we had a lot of discussion around creating civil discourse and what it is and how we would incorporate that in our district and use it. So we went through a lot of exercises to define in small groups what civil discourse is and then what behaviors would be associated with that.
Yeah, I've been involved since, I think almost since the inception when we started this. And it was by far the best meeting that I've been to.
That's
And
great.
the reason for that was just the students who came really made it, to me, much more meaningful. And it is, I haven't been around that many teenagers anymore. My kids are in their 20s now. So it's kind of cool to check in and listen to them and get to understand how they're thinking and how they're approaching this stuff. And it was good. It was an interesting group. And yeah, I think the target we have now for the civil discourse is a really good target. It's a positive motion forward. And some of the things Eric, in his facilitation, I've been around a lot of facilitators over the year, and he's a good guy with this stuff. He does a good job, and he lives it. He really, it's not like going through the motions. So that's nice.
That's great.
It is good.
Thank you both. And the last one is the Land and Building Usage Committee, but it sounds like that's no more. Disbanded. We can probably take that off our next agenda, huh?
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for your service.
And then when will we add the climate and the new one, the new climate committee, right? There'll be a new climate committee?
It-
This is for an external groups.
Yeah,
That's
so
an
we,
internal group, right?
that is, the climate committees are internal groups, so I imagine we'll be hearing updates from those kind of likely through Eric's report, and as we hear from,
Or it'll actually be me.
it'll be in your report. Oh, great,
So it is building-based committees and then
It's building-based, it's not board.
great, sorry. Excellent. So we'll be hearing about it in Sarah's report.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Audience of citizens. Do
Yeah,
we
we're
have any
moving on.
citizens?
Next up is the audience of citizens. Don't think we have anyone with us in person, but do we have anyone online?
John Dillon sent a message that says, thanks for allowing him to call in this evening. He's hoping to be back in person at the next meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Anybody else? Nope. All right. Board of Education member comments. Kim, start over here.
I appreciated the learning about the cadet program. That was great. Congratulations to you on getting that CAPE award.
Thanks.
And the TACO frameworks, a lot of great work went into that. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear about the civil discourse conversation and all those students coming. Lots of great stuff happening.
Yeah.
Agree with everything he said.
Yep.
Meg?
ditto. I did go to a conference for the New England schools, including New York and Pennsylvania, and we had good conversations around AI, cell phones, superintendent relationships. There was an interesting study done by Brown University about the longevity of superintendents and a lot of other interesting data. It was a little overwhelming, actually, but we, got to talk to different states about what's going on, and a lot of similar issues. We did a legal update, and we also did a communications update, so I'll share what I can with everybody as we go forward. But it was a day and a half of workshops, and it was really good, really good collaboration. And I also, to Kim and Dave, ditto, thank you for the taco framework. We're doing good work, and that cadet program really warmed my heart because it's allowing kids to be kids and to come and to grow, and Lily was amazing. She kudos to us for doing that.
Yeah.
Really, I mean that.
Tim?
I would say, I appreciated the band presentation. I was happy to see it filling back out after, both of my boys went through. Band was an incredibly important part of their curriculum here. And I know after COVID, things dropped off. And
It's amazing to see the participation, for sure.
Yeah. It was a big change. And then Eric's comment and talking about the possibility of the SMART goals and requiring us to do hiring quotas. I'm really happy to hear do some pushback on that, because it opens us up to discriminatory accusations if we start with a blind numerical goal and then we focus on that over all the other elements of qualifications of people who come to us. We're smart to kind of push back. I know that's a big push right now in the state. That was it.
Thanks. Sarah?
Echoing what others have said, I just was really encouraged to hear about the cadet program and how they've made that program accessible to all students, which I think is imperative, and maybe even a model for how we could do that in other programs as well. So I was really glad they came out.
Angela?
Yeah, I echo everything that everybody else has said. Congratulations to you for getting your award.
Thanks.
A lot of hard work.
Appreciate it.
Hours and commitment, so congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, for all your hard work as well, and providing me with additional information with some phone calls that you and I have gone back and forth with to give me some background on some of the things that we're doing, and that I don't have the experience. And so he's given me some good information. So I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
I just realized as we were going around, I've never paused Caitlin and Liam to ask if you have any comments at this time, and I wish that I had realized that sooner, so I apologize. Do either of you wish to share anything?
I do not tonight, but if I do in the future,
I'll be sure to ask you next time.
Yeah,
Liam?
I echo similar remarks.
Okay, excellent. I would just echo everything you all have said, and we've squeezed a lot into this meeting. And now we have a big executive session ahead of us, so I'm going to move us along. Is there a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of school administrators bargaining unit agreement and to invite Dr. Britton to join us?
So moved.
Oh, I heard Meg, and I think Tim seconded. And that's what we'll do.